Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Snortopia, and welcome to DSP News 2nd Edition, the Gout Report, so on and so forth. Okay, I'm not necessarily going to be as cheerful, I guess, as I normally would under the circumstances, only because I have a problem with the exploitation of the dead. I have an issue with that, and whatnot. So here's the thing. Here's what the situation is. We're here with the King of Hate Vlogs, Hate Live podcast, episode 6. It's from April 24th of 2014. Moving update T. Carter tribute show. Ladies and gentlemen, my initial problem with all of this is the fact that over the years, people, actually pretty much since day one, people had been down Phil's neck saying that, yo, you exploited T, that shit ain't right, yada 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 yada. And you know, it's not cool to be doing stuff like that for profit. It's one of the things that Angry Joe got in trouble for. Well, he took backlash over for the whole Jew Wario shit, or Jew Wario situation. Same type of concept, and Angry Joe has, even to this day, still fights off and says that he never monetized that video or anything upon anything, despite the fact that I believe there's still proof. There is proof out there on it. I don't know, I haven't looked into that in a long time, but I do remember Medicare going over that at one time or another. And like I said, Angry Joe isn't the only one, allegedly. There's a bunch of other people as well. So it's not like it's unique only to Phil Burnell, because it's certainly not. The biggest issue that I have, though, yet again, is you lying about it. If this was what you chose to do, if this is how you decided to play your cards and whatever, yeah, I had a tribute show for a friend of mine, and I decided and I monetized that video or whatever that case may be, then so be it. Which is what you did. Which is what he ended up doing with Scott a couple of years later. Here's the point, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna go over this video. I think it's already up on the channel, so you guys were able to get like an initial watch of it. We're gonna go through it. There's some indiscrepancies that I hope that I'm looking to point out. There's some things I'm not really that sure about because he's mixed up his story a bunch of different times. One of the big things, is if I remember correctly, when Phil had, at least the last time I heard Phil speak about the story, when T was sadly killed, it was gang related. Just like how allegedly it was gang related when his father got stuck up in front of a gas station or in front of a grocery store or whatever the case may be. But then, but here he don't say that, and then you're saying that this was a tribute show to my friend, and you know, this was just something off the cuff, and this is just me trying to remember my friend fondly. But if I remember correctly, he also says in this video that before, for this podcast, I should say, before the podcast, he actually went back and looked up the information on the case, or at least what was publicly available, so he could go ahead and bring it back to these people. So you actually put time and preparation into all this. So how are you going to sit there and say that you didn't do this for profit when you actually put the time in to make it profitable because you wanted to have your information right? On top of that, another issue that I have, amongst many, is you said that, oh, it was a small part of a much larger show. The show itself, ladies and gentlemen, is less than 2 hours. The T tribute aspect of it is well over 40 minutes. Now, Phil has said anything from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and so on and so forth, but in actuality, it's over half the show. It's almost half the show, if it's not over it. So it's not just some small little segment. Yes, he talked about other things as well. Don't worry, I'm going to spare you guys all that bullshit. But it's the larger part of the show. And it was probably one of the more talked about aspects of the show when you go back and look at the comments on it. The link to it will be down in the description if any of you feel the need to go back and watch it for whatever reason. So Phil Burnell, DSP, Darkside Phil, did profit off his dead friend, just like how he profited off of Scott when he died later on. Quick summary on that. So at this point, Phil is in Washington State with Panda or Leanna, and he hasn't talked to John and Howard in a little while. Scott dies, and supposedly there was a bit of a covenant, a brotherhood, if you will, a fraternity, if you will, amongst all these guys in the Connecticut fighting game community, amongst this group of friends, if you will. So, words getting around that, hey, Scott passed away, so on and so forth. And they're like, whoever it was who reached out to Howard and John were like, hey, maybe you guys should probably tell Phil, and let him know, and whatever. We're not going to do it, but you guys were close to him at one time, so maybe you should just at least let him know. John, at this particular time, was not speaking to Phil at all, so he was like, no, I'm not doing that shit. So Howard takes it upon himself to be like, fine, I'll reach out to Phil, I'll let him know what the situation is, so at least he knows. So he can't, wake up one morning and say he was blindsided because no one told him anything. So Howard either called him and left him a voicemail, or he sent him a text message saying, hey man, Scott died, just wanted to let you know. They heard nothing from Phil after that. A couple days later, Phil does a show and he talks about Scott's passing. Now, I haven't found that video yet. I will. Why not? But I haven't found that one yet, but I will eventually. If I match up the timeline from the John and Howard response, it shouldn't be too hard to find. But that'll be on the list. If he was just honest about the shit, this wouldn't have been a problem. Stuff like this wouldn't. I mean, people would still shit on him for it, but at least you were upfront about it. You know what I'm saying? And everything that Phil has ever done after being able to get a taste of that YouTube monetization has been for profit. So why would Phil think that anybody else would think anything differently? That, yeah, you went ahead and did a show and you profited off of it, which is what you did. You profited off of it for sympathy. You wanted people, you were trying, especially in 2014, you were about to move. You were already getting ready to pick up and move and whatnot. You were also trying to clean up your image a little bit. You wanted people to see you as a good person, despite the fact that you kind of already shat in your own nest. You know what I'm saying? This is Phil trying to humanize himself, if you will, because you know how Phil is supposedly this tragic and flawed human being, right? So this is just one part of a much bigger thing. Now, I'm not gonna hold you guys off any longer and whatnot. We're just gonna go ahead and get into it. I also do want to focus on one more thing, or I want to point one more thing out to you. I want you guys to listen to how he builds T up and then how he brings him down. You know what I mean? Almost as if he's trying to humble T after death in some ways. I'll point it out when it happens, but I want you guys to pay very, very close attention to that. Very close. It might have been something that on the initial listen through you may have not have heard, but I think that's what he did. And I think this is Phil in this awkward and pathetic way that he tries to compensate for people who have more talent or more skill than him, that he'll build them up and then he focuses on their shortcomings to bring them back down, and then he'll try to elevate himself. Pay very, very close attention to that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the situation. I'll talk to you guys in a second.
Okay. Oh, did I unmute the mic? Yes, I did. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to Hate Live. And this is segment 2, Back in the Day. And this is pretty much going to be probably the most real Back in the Day I've ever done, because it's really going to be just talking from the heart about my very personal experiences with competitive Street Fighter, my origins in that, the person who got me into it, the person who quite honestly kind of was my mentor when it comes to having that competitive edge. in fighting games, and his name was Telrance
That
Carter.
competitive snort, if you will, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with the King of Hate Vlogs. Hate Live Podcast, Episode 6 is from April 24th of 2014. The link to it, without my annoying voice, will be down in the description. Okay, so... Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, I've been very, very blunt. And very, very malicious or vicious or vile, or however word you want to describe me, as it pertains to how I shit on Phil and his actions. Don't expect anything less here. With that being said, I find it rather fascinating how someone who is supposedly so driven, right, and who has so much talent, and has all this ability, and has all this genius, and this child prodigy and whatnot, right, can never do a goddamn thing for himself. He always needs someone else to push him into a direction. He needs someone else to motivate him to do something. He wouldn't have, it's really comes across like if it wasn't for T, he would have never got into competitive gameplay, which is funny because isn't Phil the same kid who was taken to the arcade by his father and was just going ahead and spamming 100 hand slap with E Honda and was beating everybody, and everybody was like, how's this little kid beating all of us? he's the great white hope. He's the child prodigy of Connecticut. Anybody remember that story? I do. So it's funny how we go from supposedly being this child prodigy in this little piece of Connecticut, right, to now to needing to be pushed by someone who had far more talent, had far more ability and insight, but didn't have the same opportunities that you have, right? Who didn't come from the same station in life that you did, right? Who didn't have the means that you did. It took someone basically from the slums who had the ambition and the drive to do better for you to do better. And then you try to contribute your whole professional FGC career, if you will, to him. And yet you still failed in any of your own single pursuits. Another hot take, ladies and gentlemen. I found out just recently, because I just found the video on it, that Phil didn't actually meet John Rambo until after the 2005, and until after EVO 2005. That's when their friendship actually started and blossomed and whatever. So in a lot of ways, John Rambo was nothing more than a replacement for T. Carter. Essentially. I bet you guys didn't know that. Some of you might have, but I certainly didn't. I thought Phil and John went way back, which they do, don't get me wrong, but I didn't know that Phil and John didn't actually meet each other until after the 2005 EVO. The fourth place finish, if you will, to give you a better reference. I had no clue about that. But I'll drop some more as we go along.
But he went by T, and he lived in the Bridgeport, Connecticut area at a time in my life when I also lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut, but I lived on the other side of town. T, unfortunately, was not lucky. He lived in a family with many different brothers and sisters, a home that really was not exactly high income, you know what I mean, and he lived on a very, very bad part of town. And because of that, frequently found himself walking to bus stops, walking here, walking there. Never ended up getting enough money for a car. Even his mom barely could drive anywhere. When she did drive, it was to work and back. And, you know, it was a rough life for him. Really.
Now, let me jump in. This is the same piece of shit cuck, right? Who sat there and said, oh, back when I was a kid, you know, I used to go to my friends' homes and whatnot, and they had these really nice homes and these really great cars and everything. And I used to go back to my parents and be like, why are we living in this really terrible part of the neighborhood? We make good enough money. Why can't we live here? Why can't we have this? Why can't we have that? Speaking of which, didn't Phil tell us that his part of Connecticut was fucking the hood? And Jesus Christ, you could hear gunshots go off at the middle of the night all the fucking time in his backyard and shit. It was Chirac over there, ladies and gentlemen. The way Phil makes it sound, everybody could get shot at any given time. Kids were getting beat up in front of their homes for their bikes, and no one said nothing. No one came out and did anything. Apparently, they're cowards over there too. And it was just a really rough neighborhood. It was real rough. But T had it worse than you? But wait, whoa. Phil said that he pretty much grew up in the ghetto, right? And that they could have his parents could have so much better. Matter of fact, he tells us that he still consistently tries to convince his parents to move either up and out of Connecticut or at least move up and out of Bridgeport to somewhere else. They've worked hard, they've saved their money, and they deserve better for themselves. Despite the fact that this stupid asshole never came to the realization that maybe the reason why your parents didn't move is because, one, the majority of your family lives in Bridgeport, and two, and this is probably the even more crucial aspect of it, they sat there and spent 38 years of their fucking life taking care of you. And they're still taking care of you. To this day, to this minute, to this second. So they don't have, I would assume that they would have some of the money, but they're trying to save that for retirement. Other than that, the majority of their stuff goes to day-to-day bills and whatnot and trying to take care of their fuck up of a son. Jesus Christ. I thought Melissa was the one with the addiction, which she did. I should say she's a counselor now. She got her shit together. What about, and that's not even their kid. That Melissa is Phil's cousin, which is Phil's father's brother's daughter, if you will, and whatnot. They adopted her, I guess, when she was relatively young because her parents have a, yet again, problem with addiction. In any case, so she somehow she ended up fucking up, and then she ended up squaring herself away. But while their other fuck up kid, right, while their actual kid is a complete and total mess. He's got this gotcha addiction. He's a fucking alcoholic, right? And then this idiot can't even do his own job right. Not a fucking business. Let's get past that bullshit. He can't even do his own fucking job right. You sit around all day and play video games poorly. On top of that, you're in the gaming industry, if you will, in air quotes. So theoretically, you should have the pulse of what's going on day to day. You want to know why I say that, ladies and gentlemen? Because he, air quotes, works 6 days a week and doesn't have to leave his house for anything. Everything's on the internet. There's no reason why he's not on top of the majority of the shit. He don't know jack shit until someone else tells him something. Or whatever influencer that he's following on Twitter hypes something up or is excited about something, and then he tries to get his own audience excited about it. Sorry. The dude's fucking worthless. He's fucking useless. And then, I like how Phil's like, oh yeah, he had a bunch of brothers and sisters, and they don't have much, and his mother, you know what I'm saying, she could barely afford a car, and when she did have a car, they could only go back and forth, and that's it. He wasn't as lucky as the rest of us. But Phil, you had a car when you were young, but then supposedly you messed up your back in some mysterious way that we still haven't figured out yet. Don't worry, we're going to tackle that. And even while he had a car, ladies and gentlemen, he had to beg or pay people to chauffeur him around from tournament to tournament. This idiot, when most of the arcades around Phil's area closed down, there was one more arcade that he could go to. It was about 40 minutes. It's about a 40-minute drive. He has a car, and he wouldn't drive to it because of his back. He refused to go. So he would take the train or bum rides from people. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, he has a car, or he has access to a car, but he won't do it because my back hurt. My back. So he don't want to drive 40 minutes to the arcade. Think about that. Now that I think about that too, it's funny when he was dating Panda, right? And Panda had to take a bus to him or a train or whatever it was. He couldn't, and she only came out to him like once a month. You couldn't drive out there to go and get her. You had to make that chick take a train to come see you, or a bus, or whatever the case may be. You weren't even willing to go and pick her up. You made her take a train. Yikes. But remember though, at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line is Phil was from a bad part of Connecticut. The absolute fucking slums. It just happens to be that T. Carter was in some place much worse. Just keep that in mind. Because that's the mythos. That Phil was on the block. Phil was from the slums. Right? And despite the fact that his parents made good money, they were stuck in this shitty ass area. And Phil thought that they should have had better. Keep that in mind.
We met at my local arcade. Local arcade originally was called Crazy Eights Arcade. Later on, it changed, had like a shift in management, and ended up being called What's Your Game? And it was kind of a weird location because it was kind of between the bad area and the good area of Bridgeport, Connecticut. So it was kind of like people from all walks of life would walk in there and mingle. You'd have people who, like, I swear, would come in. I'm not even kidding. Like, it was so ridiculous. Suit and tie, straight out of their office job. They'd walk in. Oh, I'm here to play the Pac-Man. And then you would have, the teenagers, the kids, the little kids. I was one of the littler kids at the time. You'd have, the inner city youth. You'd have the middle class people. People from every race, creed, authority would walk into that place. And when you did, you were equal because you were all a competitor. And that was one of the most unique things.
First, most arcades were like that. Most arcades that still exist are still like that. I like how apparently everything was separated by color out there. Essentially, that's kind of where he's leaning with it. That everything was separated by color, apparently. So some of y'all shouldn't have even been here. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why you really even in this area. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even sure why you even down here. And if I had to guess, Phil's going to imply that with T, like, oh, I would have never met T if it wasn't for that. Really? You guys couldn't have ran around in other social circles? Right? You couldn't have known other people and whatnot that could have brought you guys together outside of this arcade? Matter of fact, if I remember the mythos correctly, Scott was actually a mentor to T. So sooner than later, if Phil was going to end up meeting Scott, he would have eventually met T that way. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a small world. It really is. And Bridgeport ain't that big. It's really not. I mean, apparently it's big enough, though, to where, you know what I'm saying, they got this one arcade, right? And then you have both sides of the tracks. You know what I'm saying? And apparently T was from the bad part of the tracks. But whatever, semantics.
About the arcade competitive scene that has been lost to this day is that it was just a cornucopia of culture. I met so many people through the arcade scene that I never would have met outside of that in any other circle of my life.
Well, that's very small thinking. Or it goes back to the fact that he really was sheltered by his parents. Who could ever say? But it's funny how I supposedly have all this diversity, right? And I was able to meet all these people and I was able to have all these experiences, and yet you still turned out to be a racist piece of shit. And a certainly very insignificant, indecent, just a scumbag individual. Like, you don't care about anything but yourself. You really don't. And he looks at life as making a joke out of everything that has nothing to do with him. Which is the reason why he defends the race jokes so much. Or the gay jokes and everything else. Supposedly that don't have nothing to do with him. Though, honestly, the speculation on Phil, whether Phil is actually straight or not, is still up in the air for very good reason. But that can be tackled on another time and day, and so on and so forth. But as it pertains to his penchant towards race jokes, that's something that's ingrained in him. Very, very clearly. Very, very clearly. And it's something that he can't shake. So he tries to justify it. And he'll try to use social norms and people are being overly sensitive and such to do so until you rag on him. Oh, well, you can rag on me all you want. I don't care that people make fun of the fact that I'm half Italian, half Polish, and half just roach or whatever the case may be. That doesn't mean anything, really. Then why can't I make fun of your gout? Oh, that's something I can't help. But it is something that you could help. No one told you to eat like a fucking slob until you got yourself in a position. Same thing with your fucking shitty hair, your shitty skin, your shitty outlook on life. I can make fun of all of those things. All of that is observational comedy, Phil. I can take advantage of all of that if I choose to. I can do all of that without approaching your race whatsoever. Your race is beneath me in the fact that I don't need to poke at that because that's the lowest common denominator. To be honest. Just to clarify. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to use your race as a punchline. It doesn't do anything for me. So it's the weakest, it's the easiest way to go at you. And sadly, it's the most pathetic way of doing it. Because if you aren't willing to take a few minutes to actually observe and even possibly to some degree learn a little bit about the person or persons that you're looking to make light of, right? Then you're part of the weakest individual. Let's reword that. That makes you the weakest individual because all you do is go off what you see and that's it. Which is kind of why people peg him as a racist because He's not looking to get to know other people. He judges them at what he sees at face value. He could literally walk into a store and see 4 black dudes and maybe a couple of Spanish chicks and a couple of whoever, right? Whoever else, I should say, just in line, right? Talking to each other and mingling. And he may come up to the immediate conclusion that, well, maybe they're gang members or something. Or maybe they're up to something. You know what I'm saying? And then if you add Phil's paranoia onto that, it makes it even worse. But let's go back to the initial. You know what I mean? Or he could walk into a restaurant, right? And see a bunch of people laughing, and he's the type of person to immediately turn around and think they're laughing at him, which plays off of his paranoia. He's not someone that can actually sit down and observe the situation. He's too scared to. It's easier to just go ahead and shoot first and ask questions later, essentially. That's telling. And I've seen people like that before. We all have. All of you know somebody like that. You may have not have thought about it, but everybody knows somebody like that. And they're usually the most miserable individuals. And they're usually alone. Unless they have something that other people want and or need. Something to think about.
Crazy, right? And it's funny because, you know, T, again, I never would have met him, ever. Where would I have met him if it weren't for the arcade? And really, in an arcade, everyone's equal. Everyone has the same quarter.
Wait, you couldn't have met him at a store? You couldn't have met him at a comic book shop? You couldn't have met him at that fucking shitty-ass fucking restaurant? It wasn't shitty. I'm being a dick. You couldn't have met him at whatever fucking salad place you were tossing salads at in the mall? You couldn't have met him at any of these places. Is T too poor, and are you just so closed off and closed-minded that you could never have met T Carter anywhere? Is that really what you think? Yet again, I want you to really take this all in.
Puts the quarter up, waits their turn, gets up, plays the game, and when you play, it's not about what you look like, it's not about what you dress like, it's not about how you sound, it's not about what race, what creed, what religion, any of that shit. It's about your game.
Despite the fact that he's made fun of people in the past based on all of those things. Keep that in mind. But he was just joking around though. It was observational comedy. I wasn't trying to be offensive. Yet I kept poking at that over and over and over again. That's why those compilations out there were him shitting on Asians for no good fucking reason. And he swears to God that it's funny. And that's the reason why he kept doing it. Despite the fact that the comment section keeps saying that, dude, that's fucking racist as shit. You need to stop. Dude, this isn't funny. What's your point? What's your punchline to all this? And then when you get into the FGC and you see who ends up beating his ass, right? Not physically, but they certainly could have though. But who keep handing him his ass? Who keep putting him back in his place on the pecking order as if Phil was even on it. He was underground. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't even at ground level. He was under that. You know what I'm saying? You can kind of see where his animosity comes from. Because at the end of the day, all of Phil's animosity, hatred, jealousy, all that bullshit stems from something. You know what I mean? When he goes at people, whether personally or in general, he does it for a reason. It's because of some bad experience, some perceived bad experience, some perceived slight that one of them may have given him in one time or another. All kinds of petty bullshit that the average person would just let go on a daily basis. You know what I'm saying? But not Phil. He has to remember all of that. That's the reason why this idiot right here can barely remember anybody that he's met in person who were a legitimate fan of his from like 4 or 5 years ago. But this idiot right here, for whatever reason, can go back years and tell you what some detractor said in some video under some circumstance. Or he's holding on to some bullshit slight, right? Or some offhanded joke, an actual offhanded joke that someone else said on Twitter from like 4 or 5 years ago. He can recall all of that like that shit happened yesterday. But yet he can barely recall any of the people who actually support him, whether sending him stuff through the mail, whether giving him money, whether liking and watching and sharing all of his videos. Nah, you guys are all cannon fire. It's all these other people who talk shit about me is what I choose to remember. What I choose to remember.
Your game speaks volumes about you. right? And the amount of dedication and the amount of practice that you put in. And in my local arcade scene, basically when I was starting to become a younger teenager, I'd say probably around 15, 16 years old, there was myself and there was T. Now, there were other people who played the games as well, and they were very good. But it always seemed when it came to the competitive aspect of Street Fighter in particular, because don't get me wrong, there were other games. There was Killer Instinct, there was Mortal Kombat. But when it came to Street Fighter, it was always myself on one side and T on the other. And I like to say this a lot. I used to say this. He was the Ryu, and I was Ken. Because
No.
T, I'll be honest.
T was the one he chose to latch onto. That's what it was. T was who he chose to latch onto. And Phil has a habit of doing stuff like that. I don't know what it is. It's obviously codependency. It's a big codependency type situation, but it's Phil. How do I word this? Well, no, it's utilitarianism essentially. It's everybody has to serve a purpose. And the moment that they don't serve that purpose anymore, you move on to someone else. So in one aspect, T's better than me, right? And T's here every day, or he's here every other day, or whatever the case may be. T's there enough, and I am comfortable around him to where I can talk to him and I can get him to play. And I will use my experiences to overcome him. Once I overcome T, then I get to move on to the rest of these guys in here who may be tough shit, and then I can work my way up through that. It's a kind of a building of confidence, if you will. And don't get me wrong, the arcade scene was super competitive, right? As the online scene is. If anything, at least from what I've been told, the arcade scene was probably even more grittier and certainly even more competitive because you can see the person that's next to you. But whatever, that's more of the IRL aspect of it. That's the in-person type situation. Like you can feel like vibes off people and stuff like that if you're in tune with things like that, especially if you're a social person. Phil isn't. But in any case, because Phil isn't a social person, but T probably is, or sorry, T probably was, he can latch on to T, and through T he has clout. And through that clout, he can go ahead and build relationships and experiences that he wouldn't do on his own because he's not brave enough to do so, if that makes any sense. So, like I said, T served a purpose. And T, essentially, T probably didn't know this because no one wants to look at another person like this. But T inadvertently became Phil's stepping stone. Because, yet again, there's a bunch of other people who play the game too, and they're really, really good. But T's the one that I have right here, right now, who's better than me. And I'm going to use him. Let me call it what I call it. I'm going to use him to get better and level up. And then I'm going to go after all these other guys too. It wasn't that, oh, we're going to build this up together. Because he's trying to use the Ryu Ken analogy to be like, okay, we're like two sides. We're like two sides of the same coin, if you will. We're both working towards the same thing. But in actuality, Phil isn't trying to do that. He's looking to get better than him and then step over him or step on him and over him to get better and go after the other people that's in that arcade. Because that's what's going to bring Phil notoriety. That's going to feed into Phil's ego and into his confidence in the way that he needs to. And the only way he's going to do that is by beating people. And T. Carter, even to this day, is far more respected than Phil is. He was back then, and he still is even now. Def didn't take that away from him. Something to think about.
He had the natural talent. There's a difference between someone who sits there.
Here's the buildup I was telling you guys about.
And practices and studies and works and really, strives towards their goal and eventually gets it. And then there's those people who I swear, I don't know if they're savants, where they just, like that, they get it. T was one of those people. He could take a fighting game, a particular Street Fighter game, and he could, within 2 weeks, find the most ridiculous strategy that's so good in the game. Sometimes it would even be with a character that's like not a popular character. Like I remember, for example, just an example, because we played many, many fighting games over the years, but one of the ones that we were very competitive was Marvel vs. Capcom Part 1. And he played Mega Man. Now, not a lot of people played Mega Man in that game, because he was small, he's slow, he's more of a keep-away character, he's limited in what he can do. Within 2 weeks, T knew, amazing shit with him. No one could touch him. Seriously, no one in the arcade could touch him.
He must be
And
talking about the wall tactic. Mega Man has Mega Man has this ability where he can essentially, even though he is slow, he can have multiple projectiles on a screen at once. If you time your jump arc properly, you can essentially get multiple projectiles out at one time. Plus, if I remember correctly, he can charge his blast as well. So you can have a couple of regular blasts out there, and then you can have a charged up blast at the same time. That shit can be problematic, especially if you have the right assist tube backing you up. That can essentially be an issue. But that's neither here nor there. But are you guys seeing the build-up that I was telling you about on how Phil is trying to build T's character up? And I like the fact how Phil... It's an analogy I kind of use myself. The concept between what beats what as it pertains to genius or hard work. And he's kind of doing it right here. You know what I'm saying? That, he studies, he practices to achieve his goal. But, T just had natural talent. He was a genius. He was a savant. You know what I'm saying? Something extraordinary that Phil wasn't blessed with. So Phil needs to compensate with hard work. You want a more modern analogy? I can do that. Excuse me. There's this thing floating around on Twitter and whatnot. I haven't got my Twitter account. We haven't gotten the Twitter account back yet. So if I haven't responded to you yet, I apologize. I just haven't gotten the account back yet. So that's the thing. I feel the need to say such. But anyway, there's a thing floating around at current where I guess you can see like the stats of certain Twitch streamers, right? They were posting it, like how much they stream each week or each month or whatever the case may be. And Phil streams like double what the big name or the more well-known name streamers do, I should say. And yet he doesn't bring in nearly a tenth of the amount of money. Phil's shielding of this, which is like his fourth place thing, it's a Philism, is that, I stream double what they do, and I may not make the money that they do. I don't make the money that they do, but the money I do get, I earn it because I work twice as hard as they do. Not realizing that, well, one, you're failing at what you're doing. So in truth, if you're not going to change, you should quit. Two, did you ever think of maybe working smarter and not harder? Which is what Phil has, even back then, even as a kid, is something that he's always tried to compensate with. If I'm not as talented as you, I'm willing to work as hard as you are. But in truth, just looking at Phil's nature, he doesn't really work hard. If nothing else, he has to latch on to something else to compensate, and he uses that as his hard work. Theoretically, he's doing that with T now. Or he was doing it with T back then, I should say. You working hard doesn't mean anything if the work is still trash. So then you need to work smarter. But you can't do that. Because working smarter for Phil is using people. Or taking advantage of a situation. Not capitalizing off a situation, taking advantage of a situation. And for that, he can't win. And because of that, he suffers. And he knows that, but that's why we need to fall back to, I work harder than everybody else. That's why I deserve to be here. That's not enough. That's not enough at all. It really isn't. And that still doesn't explain why you're in the position that you're in. You're trying to justify why you should keep doing this for a living and you don't want to get yourself a real job. Whatever. But you can't justify why you're failing. You can't justify why you have to beg for a living while those people get contributions, they get donations, they get subs, they get bits, and they have guaranteed, and they get money from ads, and they have guaranteed contracts with Twitch. Not to protect their little porky butts in case they get into some bullshit, which even then your partnership doesn't even do that. Like they legit have contracts with Twitch. Like, okay, we're agreeing to pay you X amount each and every month. They have that. He doesn't. He has to beg day in, day out. That's hard work? Or, sorry, advertising. Whatever. That's hard work? And that doesn't justify anything. It proves that you're the failure that people say you are. Oh, well.
Like, how does he learn this shit? And this was, keep in mind, this was before the time of YouTube, before the time of facts and tutorials that were 100% correct on the top tier strategies for a game. Back then, yeah, there were like internet message boards and people who would discuss, but no one knew what top tier strategies were. I remember for Marvel vs. Capcom 1, Jay Snyder Visant, you know, he's known in the Street Fighter community as Visant, and he's still up there, he's still well known. During this time period, was posting on forums that Zangief and Jin were the two best characters in Marvel vs. Capcom 1. Now, anyone who played the game competitively knew they're actually two of the worst characters in the whole game, but that's how it was back then. People would win one tournament, post up about it, and everyone would think it was Bible truth. Oh my god. But
well, wait a second, you're contradicting your statement because you said that anybody in the competitive scene would have known that's not true, they're bottom tier. But if someone went to a tournament and won, people would take that as Bible truth. Which means, right, that anybody can be viable. I'm not saying that tiers lists don't exist for no reason or they shouldn't be taken into accountability. The problem, though, with a tier list is it automatically puts you in a box, right? You have to, especially back in Phil's day, people were scared. Some people were scared to really experiment with characters that may or may not have been good because they all went about word of mouth. That's all a tier list is in a lot of ways. It's really just the opinion of a group of people that everybody seems to agree on. If that makes sense, right? That's all it is. It's an opinion that a bunch of people have agreed on, that have taken as the truth, if you will. That's all it is. But even back then with Viscant, whatever how you pronounce it, he's always been one to think outside the box. VDO with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is another one who thinks out of the box. There's a lot of people who are like that because after a while, you get tired of playing top tier or what people perceive as top tier. And you're always going to have people who want to cut against the grain, which is interesting because Darkside Phil allegedly, in this screenshot actually works out to what I'm about to hype his ass up on. He allegedly is the guy who's against the grain. He goes against popular opinion. He is the one who will make his own path, who will make his own way and tread his own path. He's a trailblazer, if you will. He's really not, but let's be civil about it this for a minute. He's a trailblazer. He's a visionary, and he doesn't have to go the way everybody else does. He can be his own man. In actuality, he's far from that. He's never been any of that. At all. At all. Even with this whole honest guy on internet, I tell it how it is, I don't mind being the bad guy. All of that was something that was taken from somebody else, and he just couldn't pull it off. I mean, Jesus Christ, in recent years, he's even admitted the whole situation with Howard Stern. I stole Howard Stern's jokes thinking I could get over. Matter of fact, he even said that the reason why he was pulling off Howard Stern's jokes is because that's who he was listening on the radio daily. And on top of that, Howard Stern wasn't on YouTube. So he could go ahead and take those jokes and pass them off as his own, and no one would know the difference. And since he's sitting there spitting these jokes at kids who probably don't even know who Howard Stern is, he's basically building off someone else's clout. Do you guys see where the fuck I'm going with all this? I know most of you guys do and whatnot, but that's what he is. There's nothing original about him. And as we delve into his past even further, you're going to see it. You're going to see why he has nothing now. That's why he has to have these snorty shackles, if you will, on the fucking fan base, on the cult the way he does today, because he has nothing else to keep him there. If it's not through sympathy or force, or empathy and force, really. But if it's not through empathy or force, he has nothing to hold people there. The entertainment value, quote unquote, is gone now. It's been gone for a number of years. You're not going to come to Phil Burnell you're not going to come to Phil Burnell to learn anything. He can't learn anything himself. He's probably been stagnant since his early 20s. And the whole, if anything, and I've said this before, I'm on record for saying this actually, that YouTube money was probably the worst thing that ever happened to him. But to be honest, I think in general, the FGC might have been just as bad because it allowed him to express himself off of other people. And when he failed, he could come up with all the excuses in the world. Those same excuses ended up translating into his real life later. So whenever Phil couldn't do something in any part of his life, he could go ahead and he already had a preloaded set amount of excuses on why he couldn't do it. Am I blaming all that on the FGC? No, I can't do that. Or on fighting games or video games in general? No, but it is a very good, it's a very good cushion for him, if you will, because Phil has always been And I stand to this. I stand by this. He's always been someone that if he can't do something, it's somebody else's fault. Whether it's in a team format or solo, it has to be somebody else's fault. If it's in a team format, oh, it's because my teammates didn't give me the instructions. It's because my teammates didn't look to help me and support me. It's because my team wasn't working as a team. Or if it's solo, oh, the judges are working against me. Oh, I didn't have as much time to prepare as all these other guys. Oh, those guys are geniuses and I had to work myself to the bone and I'm just tired. Or whatever else that comes into his piggy little scalp. It's what he is. And that's why this screenshot is even more relevant, because he's always looking at himself at a point of grandeur. Like the way you see him looking up to the side right now is how he views himself daily. If that makes sense. Like he expects people to look up to him, right? And to take him seriously. This is how he sees himself. He envisions himself as someone higher than what he is. It's the only thing that puts one hoof in front of the other. I know that sounds kind of off, or it sounds wild, and it is. It's all those things. But that's what he is. Because how else does someone go through the mental fuckery, the mental gymnastics that he does day in, day out? Think about what Phil has to do for a living. I want you to really think about this for a minute. Because this is broken down into a couple different categories. Okay. He has to turn on the stream. He has to wake up, right? Next to a woman that he knows who don't love him. Next to a cat that doesn't fucking respect him and shit and is just another scratching post that smells like pork and possibly even tastes like rotting pork, right? He has what family that he actually talks to, which is his mom and dad, are only there to be exploited until they finally kick the bucket so he can come and claim what he feels is rightfully his. He has no friends. He has no confidants. He has no one that he can actually reach out to and understands what he goes through on a day-to-day basis. He goes onto the internet. He has Twitter that hates him on the regular. Lucky for him, he's not even on Facebook and whatnot. He goes on to YouTube. He gets assholes like me and people who are way more talented than I am going at his neck on a regular basis. He goes on Twitch and he sees people who are far more talented than he is, who don't have to work nearly as hard, who don't have to be nearly as manipulative, who don't have to do anything but just be them and do what they want, which is what he wants. He wants to be able to do what he wants and be showered in money and in praise for it, and he can't. His whole life is shit. When he leaves his house, he has neighbors that he's either scared of, that they may recognize him, or they may have been sent, detractor, troll, hater, and critic content to expose who or what he really is. That's why he's so scared to go to grocery stores and shit by himself, right? Or to even go at certain parts of the day because he's afraid of being recognized. He's a proverbial prisoner in his own world. Like, you know what I'm saying? For someone who's isolated himself in a bubble, not just on Twitch, not just on YouTube, but online in general for years, right? Is literally a prisoner in his own life. Like in his own body, if you will. He's stuck. That gated community is nothing more than another bubble. That's all it is. It's another layer of protection that he's too scared to leave. And he's a prisoner within that. Even if he could leave, he can't. You think being a fucking shut-in is something that he wants to do day in, day out? Even I don't believe that. But he can't do it now. Or he can't change that now. It's the safest thing that he has. The closest thing to Mommy Burnell's womb. He can't leave. He's too scared. So assholes like me can run around unimpeded, not that he could stop me anyway. Because what? What's he going to say? He's going to throw some off-candid comment and that's it? I don't give a fuck what he say like that. No one should. There are people who apparently do, but they shouldn't. He's a nut. He's a literal nut. And all for what, ladies and gentlemen? For money? For power? For influence? No. Yeah. Yeah, but no, also. It's to prove to himself that he's as great as he thinks he is. He's been fighting himself all these years. This is just my own personal theory, of course. But he's been fighting against himself all these years. Why do you think he makes the excuses that he has for himself? He's shitting on himself and compensating for himself at the same time. You have to be you must not think much of yourself if you have to come up here and beg for grocery money every day. You know what I'm saying? If you have to beg for money to fight off overdraft fees, to just pay your bills. Like, obviously, whatever money you make goes to your bills, right? That makes sense. But you have to beg for grocery money? You have to beg for birthday money so you can take your wife out to something nice? And don't even do that. You just took her to Sonic's. You had to lie about taxes to move your new girlfriend in from her boyfriend's house over to you? And then still never paid the taxes? And then turned around and begged for more money for taxes that you still didn't pay? This is what he is. And you got to compartmentalize to be able to live like that. If not, he'd have already shot himself in the head. Or he'd already hung himself. That's brutal to say that, but it's true. No one can live like this, especially not in the long term. You have to have something wrong with you to be able to do that. Clearly. Very clearly. But it is what it is. But it's everybody else that's fucked up though, right? It's everybody else who has an opinion of me that are mentally ill, right? And are the sick ones, right? It's the world itself that's fucked up and flawed, right? And things should be able to go right for me at all times. And if everybody else has to deal with it, well, that's what real life is, kid. He's said this before. Why can't he well, let me use him. He says, why can't I catch a break? Why does every time things go right for me, then all of a sudden everything gets fucked up and then I'm back to square one again? But everybody else can go out here and put out shitty content and people praise them and love them for it. Why would you give money to people who are already rich? Or why would you give money to people that are already well off? Well, geez, Phil, why don't you look yourself in the mirror and ask that question? Why the fuck should people give everything they have to you and you make 6 figures a year? Off begging. Who owes you anything? Oh, those people are multimillionaires and such and such, such and such. Aren't you the same idiot who said when you opened up Patreon that if everybody who was subscribed to me or who watched my content on a regular basis gave me $1 a month, I'd be cool? Back then, ladies and gentlemen, he was still able to scrounge up, between 5 and 10,000 views a video. So he thought he was deserving of $10,000 a month on fucking Patreon? Which is what, $120,000 a year just off Patreon alone? Not counting YouTube, not counting Twitch. Or no, he left Twitch at that time. That's right. He took his snorts and went home over that Bitrate shit. So he was still making at least $100,000 on YouTube at that time. Even cutting Twitch off, he was still making $100,000 on YouTube. And he thought he was deserving of another $100,000 off Patreon? Think about that. I mean, really, think about that.
Can't knack without any help from anyone of finding the shit that was like the most top tier shit in a video game. I don't know how the fuck he did it, but he just did it. I remember in
he was able to do it just like most people of his caliber are able to do it. They have imagination. They can think outside the box. They're not rigid. They're not rigid. That's why when people make the argument, right, that Phil's above average. At what? He can memorize pattern play. Good for him. But he can't implement all of it anymore. So what good is he? He can remember matchups. Who gives a fuck about a matchup? Goji Tanks already proves that. So now that's knocked out. So what does he have? He doesn't have any imagination. He doesn't have any creativity. The two crutches, not two crutches, but the two foundations, by the way, mind you, pay attention to the wording. The two foundations to building the two foundations to build off of when you jump into fighting games, right? To develop your skills are the two things that he's still on the ground floor from and don't mean jack shit anyway. The stats that he knows or the shit that you would consider to be off the tier list is stuff that was from how many years ago? And now people play what the fuck they want. And people, if the tiers list were able to ever be changed, statistically, if they were ever be able to be changed, the list would be different. It would be slightly different. It probably wouldn't be a massive overhaul, but it would be different. Because you have people now who are more than willing to dedicate themselves to one character, no matter if that person is the worst character or not. And just fight it out. and grind it out. It's much more satisfying that way. Now it's not about the tiers list anymore. It's about how you feel about your character. And you're finding more and more players that are acting like that. Because the more and more you get into the top tier shit and trying to battle out with everybody, it's just fighting sweats. It gets old and it becomes monotonous. And after a while, that's why people will jump from fighting game to fighting game after a while, because it becomes shitty. After a while, you need to change it up. And especially in a situation where there's big money on the line, from a strategic standpoint, it makes sense to go ahead and pick a low tier character or even a mid to low tier character, because people don't have a lot of experience with it. You know what I'm saying? And we're also, yet again, in a day and age where a top tier character will get fucking nerfed to fucking hell if given an opportunity. It is what it is. Winning's important, sure. But what are you willing to do to win? Like, you know what I'm saying? There's certain levels, there's levels to that shit. Like anything else, really. I mean, look at Phil. He's at the lowest common denominator when it comes to winning. He wants to beat up on scrubs. He wants to beat up on people who have not very good connections. It's funny, when the connections are bad on his end, or where he's taking the blunt of it, we bitch and complain and angry snort all day. But what's on somebody else, he don't care. We're laughing, we're joking, we're looking at the chat. As long as he has the advantage, that's all that matters to him. That's not necessarily winning. That's just him wanting to have all the advantages, to having everything going his way. There's a difference. Just if you break that down to just the human character standpoint, there's a difference. It's not about being, and it's not even about being honorable or being noble as a competitor or as a warrior and stuff like that. It's not even going to those type of levels, right? It's just how much fun are you really going to have beating people who are not a true test to you? What's the point? After a while, that just becomes monotonous. Even your love of winning eventually gets boring if nothing comes out of it. Who the fuck wants to step into a fight that they know they can win? Over and over and over again. What's the point? That's not going to get the blood pumping for you. It's just not going to do it. It's just not going to work. Just something to think about.
3, and I'm not talking Third Strike, but I think it was part 1. He went off and he figured out that there was an incredibly easy infinite with Ibuki that does like insane amounts of damage, causes dizzy. It's a touch of death basically. And after that, no one could ever beat him again. Because if you ever get that one hit in, he would win the whole game. It was the most broken strategy ever, I think, in a fighting game. It was so ridiculous. And I always remember he had really good reaction times as well. He had really good muscle memory. He would be the guy that every time you jump at him, he's going to fucking dragon punch you. Not once will you jump at him and you will not get a dragon punch to the ball sack. That's how good he was, okay? And I remember that, you know, at that point in my life, you know, being 15, 16 years old, I was playing for fun. Now, T was a year older than me, so he was maybe, 16, 17 at the time. And I remember that at one point, he had this feeling, this inkling, that just playing in the local arcade wasn't good enough for him anymore. Because let's face it, he was the top of the food chain. He knew he was better than everyone else in the arcade. Although, occasionally I would beat him or someone else would beat him. Most of the time he would be dominating.
See that humbling aspect that I was impressing on you guys earlier? To try to keep T in check, essentially. Even long after the guys passed away. Oh yeah, he was so much better than me, but he wasn't that much better than me. I have to you got to keep him in snort reach, if you will. I can't let him completely be out of my hoofy graphs, if you will. You got to keep him close. So yet again, it's him building T up, right? And yet at the same time, still keeping him close enough though, right? Where he still serves the purpose.
Whenever he was there, and he knew that he needed new blood, and he wanted it. He craved it. He had that. What do they call that? The fighter spirit, the eye of the tiger. It wasn't enough for him to be the best at his local arcade. He wanted to move on and have more challenges in his competitive, whatever you call it. I really wasn't of that mindset.
Because he doesn't have a word for it, tells me that that's all he ever was striving for, to be the best in the arcade, and that was it. And if And with that being said, if Phil ever was able to obtain that, and even if he was given the opportunity to go and actually travel and actually play against other people on a much larger level, I don't think that would. I think he would have failed a lot sooner, if that makes sense. Because then he can always say, "Well, I'm the best at my arcade." You know what I'm saying? Or I'm the best on the arcade machines that my arcade has. You know what I'm saying? Or I'm the best in my part of the state, or whatever the case may be, or my part of town. You know what I'm saying? It's probably a good thing he was shit when T said that, hey, we need to go ahead and travel and we need to expand our horizons. Because if not, Phil would have been even more stagnant, even quicker.
Point in my life, I was perfectly happy to go to the arcade on a Friday night, play for several hours, have fun, and that was it for me, you know? And then I remember one year, T was gone for about a long weekend. He told me he was going to go to this tournament and that he wasn't going to be around that weekend.
All right, take a sip. It's funny, though, too, that he said that, he was okay with going to the arcade for hours on end and just playing and having a good time. He doesn't really say anything about mingling with other people, talking to them about fighting games and stuff like that. He sounds like the type of dude that just fed the arcades, the arcade machine quarters after quarters after quarters. And that's it. And didn't do a whole lot of mingling unless there was somebody else there with him or somebody else he knew. Which goes back to my theory on why he kept T so close. Or why he latched on to T the way he did.
I was kind of bummed because I was like, man, well, I'm not going to this tournament. It means that you're not going to be here. So I'm going to basically be beating up on all the locals here. And there's not going to be, a lot of amazing challenge for me in these games.
I already proved my point. So, I just proved my point. Yet again, I'm going to bring that back. T had to serve a purpose. And so, it's funny how T's like, I'm going off to this arcade, I'm going to be gone, or I'm going off to this tournament, I'm going to be gone for the weekend, yada, yada, yada. Oh, well, instead of him, hey, man, best of luck and whatnot, hopefully you really showed them and you show, our part of Connecticut, your part of Connecticut, that you guys, actually have some skill and shit. I'm sorry to say it that way, ladies and gentlemen, but that's how he painted it. So I'm just going off what he said. And I wish you the best of luck. He's not saying that. The first thing that comes to his head is, oh, fuck, what the fuck am I going to do while you're gone all weekend, dude? Oh, man, I got to beat up on all these local bums and shit? Fuck, bruh. Even all these years later, can't be happy for T when he initially went out there or wherever he was going or whatnot. That right there is telling. And yet again, T has a purpose to be served. And when he's not serving it, Phil feels a certain type of way about it. Same thing with John, same thing with Howard, same thing with OJ, same thing with Panda, same thing with Brightside Viking, same thing with a lot of them dudes. Just take it in. Take it in. Same thing with Jasper and Catherine in a lot of ways. When he couldn't get Catherine to come back on streams, oh, well, at least that bitch is cooking. At least she's doing that. And then Jasper, after exploiting him for the $2,200 that he got off Jasper, you see him occasionally, until supposedly every day or every other day, Jasper's trying to push the TV over and whatnot, and then he gets ran out with a spray bottle. Think about it.
And then I remember one year, T was gone for about a long weekend. He told me he was going to go to this tournament and that he wasn't going to be around that weekend. I was kind of bummed because I was like, man, well, I'm not going to this tournament. It means that you're not going to be here. So I'm going to basically be beating up on all the locals here. And there's not going to be, a lot of amazing challenge for me in these games. And I remember he came back from that tournament. And my God, he was like a changed person. It was like he saw the meaning of life. You know what I mean? Like he saw some kind of an amazing ultimate truth and that he was enlightened. Because he came back and he's like, Phil, he's like, you don't even know. You got to go to a tournament with me. He's like, yeah, I met so many people. I had so much fun.
Here's
learned so much.
That's starting to kind of throw me off a little bit. It's funny how T supposedly comes from, the wrong side of the tracks. He doesn't have all these advantages and shit. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of means, whatever the case may be. Excuse me. But yet he was able to travel off the tournaments that you couldn't go to, and he was able to do things that you couldn't do. I mean, T is a little bit older than you, but he has time to be hanging out at the arcade all the time. I'm just saying, like, the way he's painting the picture, T didn't have a whole lot, but yet T's doing a whole lot. Well, that seems suspicious. Another Philism, I'm sure.
Much. And wait till I tell you about this tournament. So this tournament actually took place around the time when, if I'm remembering correctly, everyone was playing games like X-Men versus Street Fighter, stuff like that. And he had gone to play in that, but at this tournament in the Midwest, it was actually, of all things, the Midwest Championships. That's right, it's the tournament that I ended up going to years and years later and attending many times. But at the time, he had gone to the Midwest Championships, which was held at Nickel City, just outside of Chicago, run by that's right, the world-famous Jason Wilson, who ended up years later running Midwest Championships, running the SBO qualifiers that I attended in the Midwest. He ran the Midwest Championships back then. And I remember him coming back and saying, I met so many people.
Oh, yeah, nothing. Big ups to Paul, by the way. You guys all know Paul. Paul's great. Paul, we were talking the other day in the on the premiere, and you're right. John beat Phil to go to the SBO qualifiers. Like, John beat Phil to qualify. Or he was one of the guys who beat the qualify, I should say. So there you go. Which is funny too that all of that's been brought up. Because Phil over the years have said, yeah, John was really good at Dazim and whatnot. He was a good player, but I had the slight advantage, so on and so forth. I don't know, people. I think if you go back and look at it from a tournament standpoint, I think we beg to differ. I think when John's sitting there playing with Phil at home, John wins some, he loses some, whatever. As long as Phil's having a good time and he has content for the internet. That's my initial thoughts. But I think in a real tournament setting, when John has something to fight for, yeah, you don't have to baby Phil at that point. But that's just my opinion, of course.
I had so much fun, and wait till you hear this. Jason Wilson got his hands on a beta copy. It wasn't the finished game, but a beta version of Street Fighter Alpha 3 that wasn't out in arcades yet, and they had a tournament, an on-the-spot tournament, like a day one tournament, and T won the tournament. Which, blew everyone away. Like, how could he win a day one tournament? And keep in mind,
wait, first of all, that's a really stupid statement in itself. Okay, so someone has a beta copy of a game that's not available yet, right? Someone has the beta copy of a game that's not out yet, and you guys have a tournament for it. Someone had to win, right? Like, someone had to win. So what would make T any different from anybody else? Anybody could have won that tournament. Because everybody would have been on equal ground if they hadn't have played the game yet. So what does that mean about anything? Yet again, that's Phil with these subconsciously taking jabs and whatnot. If you pay close enough attention, you see it, and he does it a lot, and not just to T. He does that to everybody. I don't know why, because it's such a scumbag thing to do, but Phil's a scumbag, so it is what it is.
Players go to Midwest Championships. We're talking the big names of the time, and this was before the era of Justin Wong and Eddie Lee. This is more like the West Coast dudes. Like, you want to talk about the OGs like Alex Valle and Mike Watson. This was their prime time when they were the big top names in the business. And I don't know if they were there that particular year, but I do know that T somehow managed to win this day one beta tournament of Street Fighter Alpha.
Are you not listening to what you're saying? It's a day one beta of a fucking game that's not out yet. Someone had to win. Someone had to win. And didn't you say fucking T was some type of savant? Do you not know what savant is? Do you not get does that not make sense to you? Does that not compute? I mean, what's wrong, valedictorian? You don't understand what that is? You know how to spell it? Like, what's the problem, kid? I'm very confused on what the situation is. Anybody could have won that tournament. It was day one. Anybody could have won that. It was up for grabs for anybody. Fucking jerk off.
He had played with Vega, and I mean the Spanish Ninja, and he had done all this stuff, and it was just like an amazing story to me, and it inspired me, and I was like, wow, if there ever are tournaments in this area, I'd like to do them, but, at that point, I never thought that I would save up money to go travel on a plane and fly out somewhere to play in a tournament. To me, that was like light years ahead, like nothing that I would even think of doing, right?
So wait, yet again, T's from the wrong side of the tracks. Can't afford a car. Doesn't have really the means, but he could save up money to go. You know what I'm saying? Go across a couple states to go to a tournament. But for Phil, that was completely out of the spectrum. Despite the fact that Phil probably could have just begged his parents for the money and they'd given it to him. It's really weird how someone who boasts about the advantages that he had over someone who didn't have any advantages isn't willing to implement any of his resources to act upon it. That's really strange. That's really, really strange. But whatever. I guess it's a Connecticut thing, I guess. I don't know.
So then
Let's be honest, it's a Philism.
Local malls started having tournaments, and I started attending them, and T started attending them too. But for whatever reason, this was really weird. Really, really weird, right? T didn't do so well in those tournaments. I don't know why. I don't know if he was more at home at the local arcade than at the mall, or he just didn't like something about the mall setting. But I do know that whenever we played at the local mall arcade, that usually I would do better than him. And he actually, for a while, it was really weird.
Here it goes. Now, keep in mind, at their arcade, their neighborhood arcade, or whatever the case may be, is where all the killers and everything are at. But all of a sudden, we change the setting, and for whatever reason, T don't do so well no more. So now, all of a sudden, T isn't a savant, right? And he's average now. Just keep it. Just try to keep us all honest. I'm just trying to keep all of us honest.
Kind of stopped playing. And what I mean is that I really didn't see him around that much. And then I remember there was this one tournament in particular.
Now, here's another thing too that I don't think he's gotten to that point yet. But the only reason why he started playing at the mall is because he got a job. So keep that in mind as well. Phil's circumstances changed, right? And he's now doing something new because he has a job working at, I don't know, someplace, tossing salad and shit. So, and whatever. So his outlook on the circumstances have changed. And because of that, and because Phil's a liar, and because Phil will overcompensate to make himself look good and to give himself any type of advantage, his perspective is going to change on T as well, which you kind of already saw. Oh, we all of a sudden go to the arcade in the mall, and there's something about it he didn't like, and I never really understood what it was, but he didn't do so well. And then because he wasn't doing so well, he just stopped playing. I didn't see him as much. When in actuality, Phil's parents probably told his ass to get a job. He went and got a job, and he couldn't go to the arcade as much anymore. Or if even if T was starting to go to the arcade in the mall, maybe the neighborhood arcade was just better competition or just closer to him or whatever the case may be over than going all the way to the mall. Just those little nuances is how Phil will take a situation and change it to his favor. It's really, really silly, to be honest.
Particular that happened where was the big thing. Oh my God, did you guys hear? Players from New York are coming. Players from New York City. We're talking the big leagues, people who enter the majors. Players who are well known as for being good are coming to our tournament in Connecticut because they want to face competition outside of New York. And I'll tell you, for a tournament that was not a major tournament, this was unheard of. Locals from another area are coming to this area to enter their local tournament. Like, it was unprecedented. So these guys, it turns out, ended up being Josh Wigfall and Mike, and I forget it. I think it was Mike. God, I forget his last name because we always called him something for short. It was Mike D. We called him, I think. And so they show up, and they're doing stuff in Marvel vs. Capcom 1 that none of us have ever fucking seen. We're looking at it like,
yeah, Josh Wigfall ended up becoming a pretty notable name in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as well. And then he said Mike D. I can't think of anybody by the name of Mike D in particular. Maybe if I had the association of what game he played, then maybe. I'm sure I've seen him in some type of match footage, I'm sure. But nothing's ringing a bell at the moment, so no disrespect to him. But yet again, that wasn't uncommon either, of having people from New York travel outwards. Like the New York crew, which is actually a bunch of crews, to be perfectly honest with you, were known for doing that. They were, especially if it was within some type of distance of them, and if they felt that it was worthwhile, they would certainly go off to different states and what for small tournaments or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's just what a lot of people did. That's how you met people. You know what I mean? So I don't know if Phil's just overhyping that to overhype it, or he wasn't around when those type of situations happen, or he never heard about it, because it's not like everybody needs to go ahead and fucking ring the dinner bell for fucking Phil and shit. You know, he can barely, scrape by with what he has. So why embarrass your state any further when the big names come in? Just something to think about. You don't serve subpar bacon, you know what I'm saying, to out of towners.
This is good stuff. This is, stuff with Wolverine, crazy ass long ass 70-80% combos, crazy ass lockdown strategies with Strider, and we're just blown away. And I remember T kind of saw it, and he was a little disappointed because he wished, I guess, that he had come up with that stuff first, and he didn't do too well in that tournament. And I remember I don't
think T's that shallow. I don't think there's very few people I think that are that shallow. First things first, because if none of you guys had any of the experience and whatnot or know-how to do any of the combos that you saw, how the fuck are you going to be down on yourself because you saw someone discover something first? That doesn't make any sense. That sounds really petty, and that sounds like someone of weak character, and I don't think T has that. And everything I've read, or at least a few things I should say, because I haven't read everything, but the few things I've read on people giving their opinion of T, he's not someone who comes off like that. That sounds like something Phil Burnell would do, though. Phil sounds like someone who's weak of character like that. But that's not a character trait that you should be trying to put on somebody else. And here's another thing, too. And I want you to keep this in mind because I'm an asshole, so you might have actually forgotten. This part right here is supposed to be a tribute show, right? To T. Why the fuck would you be bashing T like this and making him sound like he was kind of a petty individual? Because the fact that you would feel a certain type of way that someone discovered something that you didn't discover is kind of wild, especially in a video game. Especially in a video game that's still opened up to new things being discovered all the time. Let me give you an example. For Marvel vs. Capcom 2, to be honest with you, if you've watched any of the Justin Wong streams on Twitch or IFC Yipes and whatnot, those guys find new glitches and new crazy combo variances on the regular. There's actually a few guys in the Marvel heads who do that, or Marvel tinkerers. What's this dude's name? He's like an old school dude too when it comes to combo videos in general. I think his name is Desk, and he's been making combo videos for a really long time. He discovers new shit in old and new games like all the time. And if he feels that it's worthy enough, he'll put it out on video. If not, I think he has like a blog site or something he does wrestle on, because he makes music too. But the point being is that that's nothing to be down about. That's nothing that you should take as a slight to your confidence at all. It seems petty. And if you look at the way Phil's trying to paint this kid, it's kind of what he's doing. Yet again, it's the build-up, and then you bring that person down to try to humble them. But just my opinion, of course.
I made top 5. I even made like 3rd place. But I did lose to the New York players. I lost to Josh Wigfall in particular. But after the match, he shook my hand. Josh Wigfall's always been one of those stand-up guys in the Street Fighter community. And don't let anyone ever tell you different. If they say the name Josh Wigfall and they say he's a jerk, they're full of shit. They did something stupid and he's mad at them or he treated them bad because of that. He's like one of the most honorable people I've ever met in my life. And he was such a nice guy and so nice about the fact that he came to Connecticut and he was better than all of us, right? But at the end of the day,
I'm not going to say anything positive or negative about Josh Wigfall because I don't know. I've read some things that he's an alright dude, that he's a fair type of guy. I've heard I've heard that he's gone off on the cuff on some people, whether it was a misunderstanding or whatever the case may be. I don't know, and whatnot. And that was way before my time anyway. But I can't say anything good or bad about Wigfall. I don't know him and whatnot. I've never talked to him, but most people say he's all right. You know what I'm saying? But he's blown up allegedly he's blown up at some people too, which that could be said for anybody. So using Phil as a measuring stick for someone else's character is probably not the best way to go off of it, just in my personal opinion.
Our hands after our match, he said, that was a really good match. It was close, good stuff. I want to play you again after the tournament's over. And I was like, what a great guy, right?
What a great guy. Yet when Phil loses in online matches, he can barely give people any credit. So let's say what Phil's assessment of Josh Wigfall is true, which is only based off his personal experience on that one particular situation. Keep that in mind. But none of that translated over to Phil, because he doesn't do that. He should have given Goji Tank, Chaos Wolf. He should have given a lot of those people over there, Ronan. He should have given a lot of those dudes their props and whatnot. He should have given a lot of those dudes their props. He can't even do that. Matter of fact, just for a point of reference, let's step away from actual Street Fighter for a minute and go to just a comrade in streaming. Almighty Tevin, right? He got his account back. He's a partner now. He streams on the regular. I've dropped into a few of them. It's a great time. And whatnot. Tevin's funny as shit. Whether he's doing DSP content or not. He's a funny and entertaining dude. I thought Phil always said that, oh, if Tevin would go ahead and just do his own stuff, I'd give him props. Well, where's Tevin's props then? And Tevin's stream numbers are creeping up there. So where's Tevin's props? I'm just throwing that out there. I'm just curious. Because he always said, man, you have a lot of talent. Why you always got to steal from me, bro? If he did his own stuff, I would say big ups to him, or big snorts, or whatever, or snorts up. And I would say, hey man, you do great content, man. You know what I'm saying? But why hasn't Tevin gotten any of that? It sounds like he just wanted one more person off the board. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like he never had any intention at all of giving Tevin any credit. And it goes back to my general philosophy when it comes to Phil, that if he can't bash you, over and over and over again, he'll try to appeal to your ego, because that's how he'd want people to appeal to him. And it didn't work. And now Tevin, like I said, now that Tevin's kind of put himself off the board, at least temporarily anyway, Phil don't even bring him up. Phil don't even want to bring him up because he's scared people will go over there and check him out. And he can't bash Tevin anymore because they don't like partner on partner crime over there. So Phil just keeps his mouth shut. It's amazing how that worked out, huh?
So after the tournament, I remember in particular, T had lost and was, he was disappointed, but it wasn't like he was crushed or anything. But he just wanted to go do other stuff. And he had his gaming group of friends, and then he kind of had another group of friends on the side as well. It was like he had two different groups of friends, and we didn't always interact. And I remember that day he was so kind of annoyed at what had happened at the tournament that he wanted to go hang out with his other group of friends. And so he said, Phil, do you want to come hang out with us? And I wasn't really too friendly with them, and I said, nah, it's cool, I'll go home. I played in the tournament, did all right. I'll go home, and I'll see you at the arcade this weekend, or whatever it was. We shot the shit, And I thought nothing of it whatsoever. And at the time, I actually worked at the mall. I actually worked at the same mall where this arcade was in. Remember I've said in the past, I had this mall job where I tossed salad and pumped yogurt at a health food store. Yeah, this was that job, okay? And so during this time period, I worked there, and I worked there, usually it was weekends because I was still in high school, right? So I remember coming into work one day. Oh, and by the way, one thing I want to show you. T gave me this. In fact, T gave me the entire... I had like one or two of these. I think I had Blanca, and I may have had like Blanca and Honda, and that was it. These were little keychains, Street Fighter keychains, that were actually prizes, ticket prizes at our local arcade for winning tickets. And T had actually won so many tickets one day that he went and he got like a ton of these, and he gave them out. He gave me a whole set. So I have a whole set of the original 8 World Warriors. This is branded 1992, officially branded Capcom from Street Fighter 2, the keychain set. I have the whole set, and they're in like mint condition. Pretty crazy, but I thought I would show that as a little cool little knickknack for you. And so I worked in the mall. I remember this one day. Now, this was like a couple days after this tournament that had taken place. And I walk in, and as I'm walking in, another player, another local player from the area who I knew. I wasn't super friendly with him or anything, but I knew him. We had been competitive in the game. Walked up to me, and his face was so sad. His eyes were full of tears. And I looked at this guy, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And he grabbed me by my shoulders like this, and he like ringed me. He said, did you hear? And I said, hear what? He says, did you hear? No. What the hell are you talking about? Here I am. I'm in my bright neon green work shirt, right? I'm going to walk to work to punch in. I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm thinking I might be late for work. I don't know what's going on with this guy. He's hysterical. And he goes, T died. I said, what? You're pulling my chain, man. You're full of shit. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And he pulled me aside and kind of slammed me against the wall to let me know that it was serious. He was like, no, dude, T died. And I remember at the time, I was in shock. It was like, what? And at that point, that was the first person who I ever knew in my life that had passed away. And I was only 17 years old. And it was like, what? Like, it would not click in my head. Like, what is the rational reaction when you find out that someone passed away that's your friend? You know? And it's like, pain, anger, sadness, crying. I'll tell you right now, I don't remember how the rest of the conversation went. I do not remember. I don't. I don't remember. I just remember walking into my job and my boss was there and he looked at me and he says, you don't look right. What's wrong? I said, I just found out my friend died. And he looked at me. He's like, wow, I'm so sorry to hear that. Are you okay? And I was like, I guess so. And I remember working for about maybe 3 or 4 hours that day. And I don't know where my head was. I was just not myself. And then I remember at one point, it was like break, and I had to use the bathroom. And I went into the bathroom, and I went to the stall, and then it hit me. And I was like, wow, he's dead. And I cried. And that was really the first stage.
Now, there's a lot of problems with that whole story. It sounds like some shit you hear in the movies, to be honest with you. Like the whole thing with that local player, grabbing his shoulders and then slamming him up against the wall and all that nonsense. It don't come across right. The fact that Phil has never been to a wedding or a funeral or anything like that up until the age of 17 isn't unusual. It isn't unusual, I guess. It seems a little bit misplaced. We've all gone to at least to a wedding or some shit. But, you know what I'm saying? But, whatever. So him never being to a funeral or never knowing someone who died. Actually, let me take back that whole statement. Because let me think about what he said. He said he had never known anybody that had died before. That right there's... I think his parents probably just didn't tell him. Because if he had relatives that passed away that he wasn't close to, or he hasn't been introduced to, then what would be the point of telling Phil anyway? Maybe Phil really was sheltered as fuck as a kid. I don't know. That just seems odd that you've never heard of someone that your family knew, or a family member, or a family friend, or something like that, or even an acquaintance at a job or something of your parents have passed away. I just find that kind of odd. But then Phil's, is kind of all in his own world anyway. So he kind of only cares about himself, so why would he care? Huh. Okay. Well, anyway, I just want to throw that thought out there. As it pertains to, he comes across being pretty down. He goes to the bathroom and then he cried. That's not exactly how people would have worded that. They said that if they would have said that it finally hit me and then they would have broken down. And you know what I'm saying? But just to come out and say they cried, it sounds something blunt. And it doesn't sound very honest. It sounds like you're trying to convey an emotion, but you really didn't do it. That's kind of what it seems like to me. It comes across as a lie, to be honest with you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Phil may not have shed some tears for T, but it didn't happen the way he said it did. Not that I don't think so. At least not the way he's explaining the story. It don't sound right. It just clearly don't sound right. And then if you look at Phil now, when his aunt died, when he thought his parents were supposedly deathly sick and they were gonna die, when he ain't try to break down on his fucking chair about how hard his life was and all that dumb shit. None of that shit seemed legit. If anything, the only time he really seemed like he cried was when he was crying for himself. When he said, life hasn't been the easiest for me. That right there probably seemed like the closest thing. Maybe. And even then, that was kind of bullshit. But Phil's never shed no tears for nobody else. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Accepting it, but there was always a piece of me in my head that didn't want to. A piece of me that was like, no, this didn't happen, And it was funny because that was kind of my reaction to everything. Like, I went to my parents and I told them, and they were like, are you kidding me? What happened? And I was like, I don't know the full story yet. I heard that he was shot, and I don't know.
Wait, and I thought you said it was a bad neighborhood, though, and you guys heard gunshots all the time. Not to say that your parents should have been like, oh, that's a shame, but, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of the situation we live in, son. We're in a rough neighborhood. That's how he's always painted the situation to us. Now, all of a sudden, his parents are shocked, but Phil, if your parents are used to hearing gunshots, after a while, Phil, if you've really been on the block, you kind of become desensitized to it. People can mistake a gunshot for fireworks all the time. Especially if you've heard it enough. If you're not used to being around that element. Your story about being in the hood, man, is starting to break down. It's starting to break down fast. I am very, very disappointed. Very disappointed. Because I don't see how a very weak fuck like yourself could have ever grown up around gunshots. I very likely doubt that's the case. At the end of the day, you're way too paranoid for that. And don't be wrong, not to say that, if you heard excessive gunshots as a kid wouldn't make you slightly paranoid, but you're in a relatively safe place and you know that. And I assume that your neighborhood really wasn't as bad as you say it was. It really wasn't. I've been questioning that for a long time, to be honest. But whatever. It is what it is.
I don't remember. I'm serious. Like, I swear to God, my subconscious has blocked it out. I don't really remember much about that time period of my life. I don't remember if I went to the arcade or not anymore at that point. I know eventually I went back, but I don't know at what point, if it affected at all what I was doing. I do remember going to the wake, and I remember the wake was the most fucking weird thing I've ever done in my life because he did not look like himself. He looked weird. He looked like a mannequin to me, and I'm staring at him, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what the fuck is going on? This is so unbelievable. Things were going so well. You
guys have heard that before too, which kind of gives into Phil's. I like this two-faced aspect of it. Like, you see how one side of his face is kind of like really, really dark. Anyway, that actually kind of feeds into a particular aspect of Phil's subconsciousness, or his general consciousness, I should say, as it pertains to when things are working well or what he perceives as working well, he doesn't handle change well. So, in actuality, since T is no longer there, he went ahead and just shut him out. And then he looked for somebody else to basically take his place. As he did with Brightside Viking, as he did with a bunch of people. That's kind of what Phil does, to be honest. Like, you know what I'm saying? And this is the same individual, ladies and gentlemen, who said, and I quote, if T had lived, Phil would have probably been one of the best Street Fighter players out there. Think about that statement for a minute. If T had lived, I would have been one of the best Street Fighter players out there. So, in Phil's head, he already had like a long-term plan for T in some ways, which is kind of wild if you think about it. But then again, ladies and gentlemen, to give you guys something a bit more current, that's kind of like the mindset he had for John Rambo, when he moved from Connecticut to Washington. When Phil moved, he thought him and John were going to have the Coast to Coast show. He thought they were going to still do Smart Guys, and he thought they were going to do online co-op with each other. And when all that happened, Phil kind of, like everything Phil had planned, fell apart. because everything that he was basing his business on when he started making content again after coming off of the move was based on John. And you saw how all that fell apart. So Phil ends up spending the last part of 2014 and at least some of 2015 sneak dissing and taunting John and Howard, mainly John, to try to get him back into position. And then all the excessive phone calls about when we're going to do content, when we're going to do content, when we're going to do content. Yet again, if you're not serving a purpose, then there's no need for you. And Phil doesn't adapt well on the fly. Just something to think about.
Life, someone who was a savant at video games, and really, let's take a look at what has happened to video games since 1999 when T passed away. Sure, in the years 2000, 2001, 2002, there was a lot of stagnation, but then with this reinvigoration that happened with Street Fighter 4, I guarantee you, if T were still alive, he would have been one of those savants. Day one, he would have figured out all the top tier shit. He would have been dominating everyone with Sagat from day one. He would have been winning tournaments. He would have been going around, and just to see, I still don't know what to say about it. I don't. I'm just so flabbergasted at what happened. So now I'm going to tell you guys what happened, okay? Because if this isn't the most just vile story of people who just don't need to exist, people with absolutely no aim or drive or purpose to their life, I don't know what is. You're not going to believe the story. So here's the story. Where do you hear this? So it was either that day when we were at that tournament at the mall that T had not done too well in, and he had gone to hang out with his other friends, or the day after. That was never cleared up what day it was. But like I told you, T lived in a bad neighborhood. He couldn't afford to live in a good place. And unfortunately, what would happen a lot of the times is that people would drop him off a few blocks from his house because, quite honestly, and this is no exaggeration, he was in one of the worst places to live in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The most crime, drug dealings, shootings, all of that stuff. And he just couldn't move out because that's where his family lived. He had to live where his mom could afford, right? So
that's interesting, because isn't that the same thing with your situation? And now that I think about it too, you guys said they used to hear gunshots blasting off in your backyard all the time. So you weren't that far around the way. So your spot wasn't really much better than T's, allegedly, according to pig lore. Okay.
People would not even drive up to his house. I was one of the few people, when I finally could drive when I was 16, I was willing to drive up to his house, at least in the daylight. But I knew that I had to get the fuck out of there as soon as I dropped them off, because that was a horrible area, okay?
But weren't kids getting beat up for their bikes right in front of your house? And didn't you tell your father that you didn't want the new bike? Well, you didn't want to learn how to ride a bike anymore, let alone did you want the new bike that you just won outside of the bike that your father already bought for you to teach you how to ride a bike. Didn't you say that you didn't want any of that because you were afraid you were going to get beat up? I'm just throwing it out there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just curious.
Here's what happened.
And wait a second. You didn't want to learn how to ride. I know this is going to sound really, really petty, but you didn't want to learn how to ride a bike because you were afraid that you were going to get beat up and get your bike stolen. But you were comfortable learning how to drive a car, knowing damn well that you could have, I mean, if your block is really as bad as you say it is, you could easily get carjacked and be killed for your car. Or for your parents' car.
Apparently what happened was he had gotten dropped off a few blocks away from his house. Now, what I'm telling you are facts based off the police report that I read the other night. Because for years...
Which means he had this planned. And that's our smoking snort. I'm going to bring that back to you. But that's our smoking snort. This piece of shit, who I didn't profit off of my dead friend, that's not what the point of this was. It was supposed to be a tribute. I went ahead and spent a couple of days beforehand, you know what I'm saying, looking up the report and looking up the facts and details of this case so I can present it all of you for this podcast. A podcast that I profit from because I monetize it. But I didn't make any money off my friend. I didn't throw any ads on that video. You didn't have any ads on this video, Phil? This video wasn't monetized? I didn't profit off of my friend, really? You didn't make any money off this video? You didn't make any shekels? Come on, man. T's dead now. What's he going to do about it? So you didn't make no money off this video? You're not still making money off this video, Phil? Defiant sniff.
I knew that I had to get the fuck out of there as soon as I dropped them off because that was a horrible area, okay? So apparently, here's what happened. Apparently what happened was he had gotten dropped off a few blocks away from his house. Now, what I'm telling you are facts based off the police report that I read the other night. Because for years, as I said, I lived in denial. I didn't want to know the circumstances around it. It was too emotional for me. And finally, the other night, I manned up and I looked up the police report. And now I know exactly what happened. Here's what happened.
You're a
He's
scumbag.
walking home.
So wait a second. You were willing to go to your friend's wake and presumably his funeral, but you weren't willing to look at the details of the case? Or you weren't willing to talk to anybody who was close to T, who knew the information about the case and hear what happened? But yet you were willing to go to this guy's wake and his funeral. You were willing to look this kid's mother and his brothers and sisters in the face and say, I'm sorry for what happened. But you weren't willing to look into what the situation was that may or may not have had him killed? Well, I guess with friends like that, what do you need enemies for, huh?
Only a few blocks away. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He wasn't looking for trouble, right? He never had. He wasn't that kind of person. So he's walking home, and there's another car coming from the opposite direction, coming up his street. And the car stops. There's 3 youths inside the car. One of the youths...
3 youths? What are you, the cops? Anyway, it's interesting that, like I said, I swore Phil said somewhere that the situation with T was gang-related. I swore Phil has said that. I don't know where, though. Because, Jesus Christ, all this shit blends into each other after a while. But I swore he said when T got killed, that was like some type of gang initiation thing. Or, back to what I said at the beginning of all this, something with the situation with his father getting stuck up was gang affiliated. But I'm pretty sure he said T got killed over something gang related. Or a gang initiation, I should say. Well, like I said, if that comes up, I'll let you guys know.
Says that he has to piss. Stop the car. I have to piss right now. Now let me ask you something. What kind of person, what state is a person that they have to piss so bad they can't wait to get to a toilet? So it's quite obvious he was either intoxicated, inebriated, whatever it was, okay?
Wait, because someone needed to take a piss and decides to get pulled off on the side of the road to do so and whatnot, he had to be on some type of drugs or something. Is this really what he's saying? Have any of you guys been on a long road trip before and had to take an immediate stop somewhere and you couldn't hold that bitch? Or have any of you guys just have a weak bladder on a particular day and you had to stop by and take a piss somewhere? You don't have to be inebriated. I'm sorry. I'm not even gonna dignify that with a response because I already know where he's going with it. So I'm not gonna. We'll let that go. Fuck you, Phil. We'll let that go.
Out of the car, literally walks to the sidewalk and begins to piss.
What kind of scumbag streamer has to sit there and fucking snort and belch into the mic every day and thinks that shit's entertaining? Who has to sit there and chew on their fucking water and be like for every little sip he take? Is that the gin? You didn't have enough ice in there, buddy? You didn't put enough Sprite to cut the gin properly? What was it? That's me making an assumption that you're drinking on stream, which more likely you are anyway, right? it's an assumption that when you're supposedly taking a bathroom break, or not taking a bathroom break, when you have to go to the bathroom to drink your fucking toilet water, right? Then in actuality, you're actually just going off a screen and then off the stream, and you're actually pouring gin into that cup, your little sippy bottle. That's making an assumption. But then again, when you drink water, you chew your water. When you're drinking something else, we get a whole lot of that. I'm just throwing it out there.
Off of the sidewalk. Okay? Now, T doesn't know what the hell's going on. This guy's facing, a building or whatever, minding his own business. He's walking down the street. The guy hears him, turns to him, gets startled, pulls out a gun, fires 4 fucking shots. Not 1, not 2, 4 shots into T's chest. So it wasn't just boom, oh shit, run away. It was intentional. Boom, 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 boom. Runs away with his dick hanging out, jumps back into the car,
Okay,
tells
so
his
obviously you're lying about this police report, or you're lying about the aspects within it, to be honest. Because there's some discrepancies, I'm sure. Now, Phil, you're the one, you yourself have said it at least 3 times so far, that this is a really, really, really bad neighborhood, and that's why T has to be dropped off a couple of blocks away from his house. Okay, if you're in a vulnerable position, as this dude is, for example, not that I'm justifying what this dude did, because I'm not, but you're taking a piss on the side of the road, it's dark outside, and you hear someone coming up on you, and you're bucking shots for whatever reason, and he's trying to use the guy being under some type of controlled substance or under alcohol to justify why T got killed. Now, whether that's in the police report or not, I couldn't tell you. But that's the picture Phil's trying to paint here. You're not going to just shoot once in the dark and that's it. Because, Phil, if the dude is fucking under the influence, right? Drugs, alcohol, or whatever the case may be, one shot may not have been enough because maybe he thought he missed. And if you're shooting at someone, you kind of don't want them to shoot back. You thought about that, Phil? Oh, that's right. Phil don't like guns. I forgot about that. Phil's actually scared of guns. There's nothing wrong with that if that's the case. But I forgot about that little detail. So you can't paint the picture that, oh, this dude was under drugs or alcohol, and then say that, yeah, he went ahead and shot him 4 fucking times and that was on purpose. If the dude was under the influence, then it would make sense. If it was in the middle of the goddamn night and it was dark outside and whatnot, and he heard something and whatnot, and he's paranoid because he's in a vulnerable situation, yet again, that would kind of fall into that situation as well. So you have to pick or choose. Did he murder T for just the pure sake of doing it? Or did he do it because he was under the influence? And if he was, yet again, if he was under the influence, he may have thought he missed the first couple shots. And I'm not sure, Phil, if you've ever worn a vest before, but boy, it only takes 1 or 2 shots to hit the ground. So did he come up on T when he was on the ground and then finish him off executioner style? Did he put the other 2 bullets in his chest while he was on the ground, Phil? Because I kind of find it hard to believe that you would take 2 bullets to the chest and still stand to take 2 more. Unless he got shot with a small caliber weapon. But even then. But that's semantics. Like, I don't need to be breaking details down like that. I think you get what I mean.
His friend's like, what the fuck just happened? He goes, I just shot some kid, let's go. Kids drive off and that's it. Luckily, people heard it. And I have to say this, luckily people fucking reported it. Because I hate to say it, there's a big problem in the United States of people who do not report this kind of stuff. Reported it, the cops found them, all right? Arrested them immediately, found the gun, found everything. And apparently in the heat of the moment, in the arrest, okay, they didn't read the guy his Miranda rights. This is going to come into play, so let me give you the whole story, okay? They didn't read the guy his Miranda rights, but they did interrogate everyone. They found the gun, the bullets matched the gun, the piss was all over the street. Kind of hard to dispute it when your fucking DNA is all over the street because you pissed all over it. He blatantly told both people in the car that he had shot T, and they both squealed on him. Both of the people in the car told on him and said, yeah, as soon as he ran back in the car, he said that he shot him. We don't know what the fuck he did that for. right? Basically,
Well, yeah, no one wants to be the accessory to murder, Phil. So yeah, I'm sure they did squeal. Wow. Okay, whatever. Them dudes. Okay, the way Phil tells the story, them dudes didn't have jack shit to do with that killing, right, or that shooting, if you will, but certainly that killing. They had nothing to do with it. This dude supposedly comes back to the car. Yo, I shot someone. Get us the fuck out of here. Them dudes are gonna be like, the fuck you shoot somebody for? And then when the cops come and pick their asses up, excuse me, the boys better sing. The boys better, or are they all gonna go down together? So yeah, they better sing their fucking hearts out. And Phil's saying that this dude wasn't read his Miranda rights. So you're telling me the other two got their Miranda rights read to them, but the actual shooter didn't?
Literally a 3-ring fucking circus of evidence proving that this guy had done it. Proving it. Definitively that this guy had done it. So, he goes to trial. You know, he's in jail, goes to trial, blatant murder, because that's exactly what it is. It's murder. Although, I believe what it was, aggravated manslaughter. It's not blatant premeditated murder, because obviously he didn't even know who T was, so it can't be that highest murder charge. It was the one that gives you, like, 50 to life or whatever, because you just killed someone with no reason. So, goes to trial. What's the guy's defense? They didn't read me my Miranda rights. That's his defense. Because the guy had none. He literally murdered my friend for no fucking reason. He's that low of a person on the food chain. That low of a person in just the levels of life. You've got, the people up here who are like really nice people. They help people. Then you've got normal people. Then you've got people who just look out for themselves. Then you've got, people who are barely functional. Then you've got the people who are in the hospital that are vegetables. Then you've got the animals. Then you've got, the subhuman levels of life. You've got the mitochondria. You've got pond scum. And then you've got him. The guy that will literally murder you for fucking nothing. Okay? He has no defense. His defense is, they didn't read me my Miranda rights. Thank God. Thank God that there is at least some justice in the justice system. Even though they didn't read him his Miranda rights, which, yes, people can actually get off for it. Get off and not get charged or go to jail. Okay? He went to jail, and here's why. He got convicted of murder, 50 years to life. Ended up getting really convicted of a 50-year sentence. Why didn't the Miranda rights come into play? Because they had so much evidence against the guy, there was no way there could have been a shadow of a doubt. That's what they're basically saying. Okay, so you didn't read him his Miranda rights and he confessed.
So, according to what I found right here, according to what I've heard right here, man 22 found guilty of murder. This particular news article is from November 17th of 2000. It says right here that a 12-person jury deliberated 2 days before finding the individual guilty of murder. And he says that the guy is facing 60 years, or is facing up to 60 years in prison. It says right here that T, according to authorities, says right here, T was killed March 26th of 2019. Sorry, of 1999. I apologize. It says right here that Carter was standing on the sidewalk when a car pulled up. A guy jumps out of the car and begins urinating on the street. When the guy sees T, the guy pulls out a handgun and shoots the victim 4 times, according to the authorities. Jumps back in the car and ends up leaving. It says a police officer ends up stopping the car short time later and arresting all 3 occupants in the car. Let's see, their ages were 22, 19, and 19. And the other two rolled over on the shooter in exchange for reduced sentences. Let's see what else we got here. that's pretty much that. That's pretty much that.
If we take away his confession and say he never confessed, both of his friends said he did it. His piss was at the scene. The bullets matched the gun. The DNAs and fingerprints on the gun. There's no defense for this guy. Zero. So regardless that he confessed, it didn't matter. And it didn't matter that they didn't read him his Miranda rights. He went to jail. Get this. He's tried to appeal twice as recently as, I think it was 2009, trying to get out of jail saying they didn't read me my Miranda rights. What lawyer would waste their time with this fucking guy? Really? You're not going to get him off. There was overwhelming evidence that he did it. Why would you know what I mean? Like, why would you even bother trying to appeal? But I guess that's our system. They're trying to be fair and balanced. Everyone gets a shot. Whatever certain year criteria it is, they could try to appeal. His only defense is that they didn't read him his Miranda rights. Now, by the way, let me say this. For those of you who don't know what Miranda rights are, because I just realized I have an international audience who may not know. In the United States of America, when you're being arrested, the police officer who is arresting you and taking you into custody must read you a statement stating that you have certain inalienable rights, that you have the ability, like for example, you have the right to remain silent, you have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford one, an attorney will be provided for you. Basically things that are provided for by the law. And if they don't read that to you, and you confess, for example, exactly what this guy did, later on he can say, well, my submission or my confession is inadmissible because they didn't read me my Miranda rights. And I'm not smart, so I didn't know that they could use that to incriminate me. So that's his whole case, but luckily there was enough evidence that he's been put away, and he's going to serve at least another 35 years in jail for what he did. Okay?
It's funny, though, Phil, that despite what the individual did and what he confessed over and whatever, he does have the right to be read his Miranda rights. That is a thing, right? And it's funny how you want that waved aside because he took your friend away from you. Now, there's another problem, too. There was 3 individuals in the car, right? And they were all arrested, at least according to the article I just read, by the same officer. So why aren't the other 2 guys saying that they weren't read their Miranda rights, or that why aren't they saying that their Miranda rights wasn't read to them, but this guy is? All 3 of them were caught in the car together. They were all arrested. So like, what sense does that make? By the way, Phil, I'm just wondering. Whatever.
But it really just when this happened, I remember. I don't remember that like few months. It was a flurry that I lost. I couldn't tell you what happened during those months. I couldn't tell you my mindset.
And at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, guilty or not, all of them and whatnot have the right to, you know what I'm saying? They have the right to due process and everything that comes along with that. Reading their Miranda rights is extremely important because Phil is right. People do get off under that criteria. You know what I'm saying? So, and Phil's the first one to tell you, "Oh, I thought it's guilty until proven, or it's innocent until proven guilty." I mean, it's tit for tat. Like I said, I'm not defending the guys who did it or any of that. I'm just saying they have the right to due process. Because if not, and that shit was considered a fuck up, that dude could have walked. Just saying. So, heat of the moment, whatever the case may be, that was negligence on the officer's part. But Phil wanted him tried and convicted right away anyway. Just something to think about.
What I can tell you is that I didn't give up. Eventually, I had the courage to eventually play Street Fighter again. And I always remember every fucking time that I played Street Fighter, I thought, this is for T, you know? Because he would have wanted me to go to the next level, to go to the next step. He was the one who was trying to motivate me to leave Connecticut and go to tournaments. And eventually, not only did I start playing in and winning my local tournament scene in Connecticut, I ended up traveling. I went to ECC, which is the East Coast Championships. I went to B5. I went to other tournaments in the area. Later on, as the games became more prevalent, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I went to Philly. I went to Texas. I went to Chicago. I went to California. I went to Vegas. I traveled everywhere playing Street Fighter. And I never have done that, never, if it weren't for T. Because like I said, he was really the Ryu. He was the one with the natural talent. He was the one that inspired everyone else around him to become better. Because of his positive attitude, because of his drive, because of just his spirit. The smile on his face when he came back from these events was amazing. Okay? And now, without further ado, what I'd like to do is shoot over to a different...
It's a shame that none of that rubbed off on this piece of shit. You know what I'm saying? Which is funny, too, in a macabre sort of way. That Phil believes that everybody should be positive, everybody should be on the up and up with each other, you know, everybody should be treated equally, but yet he believes he should be treated special. He believes that since he's been around for 10 years, his word holds more merit than other people's word. And that despite the fact that he has admitted to lying multiple times, that he should still be given the benefit of the doubt. But someone like PewDiePie, Markiplier, any of those guys, Ninja, who are all, in his words, shills, they shouldn't be taken seriously, or they all should be considered liars because they only do it for the almighty dollar. Something to think about. Just something to think about.
Thing here and show you some pictures of T at the Midwest Championships that he attended that one year. Because that's actually where these pictures are from. These are from the very first time that Telrance attended the Midwest Championships I believe it was 1998. I'm not positive 100% on that. So obviously, you know, this is him with the camera in front of him, so that's not going to help you very much. But it's kind of funny. Take a look at the poster on the wall. X-Men Children of the Atom, you know, an arcade game from the time. Let me actually go all the way to the bottom here. It's not scrolling. There we go. All right. So there he is. A nice candid shot of him posing in the arcade. And the reason that he's posing in a fairly empty arcade, I'm going to explain in a moment, because of who he was friends with. Another local from Connecticut who became a legend because he was friends with pretty much all the top groupings in the Street Fighter community. There he is. There's T, and standing right directly to the left of him, his name is Scott Hovhannissian. Scott was a hell of a character, man. He's still around, but, I mean, he's semi-retired. He doesn't really care about Street Fighter anymore. Of all the people, you know, who were affected by T's loss, he was affected as one of the hardest because he was kind of like the mentor to T. He saw T's natural talent. He was the one who traveled with him to the Midwest Championships.
And here's another irony of all that. So you got T here in the red, and then you got Scott right next to him. Both of these dudes die, right, or pass away. Let's try to be cordial about this and whatnot. Both of these guys pass away, and with T, he's only. You'll find out this whole situation comes about with T because Phil's about to leave. He's about to leave Connecticut. So this is kind of his final send-off, I guess, trying to, starting the trend, to be honest with you, of profiting off of his friends that are in Connecticut or associates. Because as you find out what he does with John and Howard later with the reboot of Project 7 and all the garbage that comes with that. And then, but T passes away. Then Scott ends up passing away a couple of years later. Phil don't know about that until Howard reaches out to him, and he don't even have the decency to call Howard back or message Howard back and say, hey, thank you for letting me know. Oh, I got to go ahead and make a stream, and I got to go ahead and put out a YouTube video profiting off of it. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, isn't a one-off. This is a pattern. This is a pattern. This is what Phil does, and he feels justified in doing it. And he would do it to this very day if he could. I'm not going to throw no names out there. I'm not going to say nothing about nothing because I don't want to wish nothing on nobody, and I don't want to have I just don't want nothing to happen to nobody. But if Phil could do it again, he would, and he will. That's what he does. Once might be a coincidence. Twice is a pattern.
Okay? And so Scott was kind of the, what do you call it, the barrier, the bridge between us and the competitive Street Fighter community. He was very good friends with Jason Wilson, he knew Seth Killian, he knew all the top dudes in Street Fighter who ran tournaments. And although Scott was never amazingly good on a competitive level, he's one of the funniest fucking guys you'll ever meet. I've already told the story about the East Coast Championships that I went with him, and he was staying in our room, and basically he was like making fun of me because I told everyone to be quiet because I wanted to go to sleep, and he was like, "Hey guys, be quiet, I want to go to sleep." And then when we would finally, everyone would laugh, and when everyone was going to sleep, he would go like he was jerking off, like, oh yeah, in the corner of the room. He's a fucking funny dude. And he is the one who traveled with T to Midwest. So there's one picture there.
Did you steal any of Scott's jokes either? I mean, did you steal any of Scott's jokes too? I mean, we could say, if this was on like an alternative like timeline or some shit, that you did kind of steal Scott's jerking off joke, except for your dumbass actually did it in real life. Imagine that.
Another candid shot of T on the outside. I'm not sure where they are. This does not look like the parking lot of Nickel City, which is the arcade where the event took place. So I'm not sure where this is. Let's see what else we've got here. This is funny because the guy who gave me these pictures goes, "I have no recollection who the person on the left is." He gets through the picture, he goes, "I don't have a fucking clue who that guy is, man. Like, he wanted to take a picture with T. I don't know who that is." So I have no idea who this guy is. I don't even know if he still plays Street Fighter. Who knows? But there you go. Now this is a cool shot. I'm going to give a few seconds here, and I'm going to ask anyone in the stream chat right now, do you recognize who that person to the left of T is? I will give you a cookie if you could tell me the name of the person standing to the left of T, because he is extremely well known in the Street Fighter community. Extremely well known. Let's see if anyone can guess. No one so far is... Oh, they got it. They got it. Ponder, a.k.a. one of the Cannon brothers, a.k.a. one of the co-owners of Shoryuken.com and one of the co-runners of EVO. So there you have it. I mean, if that's not evidence that you know, those guys were around back then and they were, you know, before there was an SRK. This was before there was an SRK.com. This was before there was an EVO. They were traveling the country playing Street Fighter. It was a grassroots movement. So that's a pretty cool showing of kind of a semi-empty arcade. Now, the reason that this arcade is so empty is because they were actually allowed in.
It's funny how we bring up the Cannon brothers, right? Because when he had that rant at the end of 2020, last year, I went over it when the shit about Mr. Wiz came out and all that shit was coming out about the Smash community and all the nonsense that entails. Phil went on an epic rant shitting on SRK staff, mainly the Cannon brothers, for, oh, they had to have known what Mr. Wiz was doing, and why did they have all the influence anyway? Why were they pillars in the Street Fighter community? Who were they? Who did they beat? You know what I'm saying? What made them so goddamn special where their word was law and so on and so forth? But yet right here, he's praising them, saying that, hey, they're pillars, you know, they traveled the tournaments. They were actual players before they actually became site owners and eventually ended up running EVO and turning that into a business. And they deserve respect. So it's funny how in 2014, we could show these people respect and say these guys were actually players that were coming up through a homegrown grassroots movement. But in 2020, shit on them assholes, and who the fuck are they? And how dare they screw me out of EVOs, and how they're covering up for Mr. Wiz and his alleged pedophilia and all the other nonsense that had to entail, letting the West Coast players get over while the East Coast players got scrapped. Anybody remember that? They should. I did a video on that. I did a couple of videos on it. And Mr. Huffstuff and Snorpernell all have it. I think Mighty D might actually have done a video on it too. So that's a thing as well. Keep that in mind.
In early because they were helping to set up. because Scott was friends with Jason Wilson. You were allowed to go in early as long as you helped set up the tournament, and that's why the arcade is fairly empty. These players are probably testing the controls. And someone says, is that guy in the background picking his nose? Do not look. I don't know. Oh, God, I clicked the wrong one. Okay. So this is a shot of probably what the arcade looked like a little bit more when it was more crowded. Keep in mind, back then, it's not like today where you go to a tournament and there's a giant projection screen and you could watch the stream on your phone. It wasn't like that at all. You had to jump, crawl over people, look over people's shoulders, stand on chairs to see this little arcade monitor to see what was going on in a game. So it was extremely crowded in these arcades. It was such a different time. And, how things have changed. So, all right. What else do we got? See, I like this shot because this basically gives you an idea of what it was like to play on arcade cabinets. You'd be standing directly next to your opponent. A lot of the times it was a cramped area. Sometimes you'd have a chair. Sometimes you wouldn't. As you can see, there's actually a stool behind one of the players here who probably thought some players were comfortable sitting in the chairs. Others weren't, depending on your height. And I guess these guys are opting to stand up. And you basically all stand in a row alongside each other playing. You'd be shoulder to shoulder. And then, like I said, a lot of the times when the arcade got more crowded, you'd have people looking around the sides, looking over your shoulder, trying to see what was going on in the match. Okay. This is a cool one because this is Chicago O'Hare Airport. Apparently, when they went to meet up with T when he flew in, they went and picked him up from the airport, and this is him walking in at the airport, which is pretty neat. So O'Hare Airport 15 years ago, before the day of the full body cavity search and the extremely intrusive radioactive scanning, before 9/11, when you could actually walk through the airport and not have to fear for your life. Here's another shot. Heated competition. The players all lined up playing each other. Actually, give me a second. I'm going to walk up to my PC and see if I recognize any of these players. I recognize... Let's see. Well, unfortunately, I do recognize one of the players, but he's a scumbag and he was a thief. One of the players here is a notorious thief who used to go to tournaments and steal people's shit, and people didn't know it until about 2004 when he was permanently banned from every tournament ever. So I'm not going to name him because he does not deserve it. Okay, then. Continue on.
That's nothing new. That was actually there was actually a pretty lucrative racket allegedly going on around that time where people's arcade sticks were getting stolen, consoles were getting stolen, and then resold on eBay or in other places. Actually, if I remember correctly, SRK, and it still does, I believe, has like a buy, sell, and trade little marketplace on the site, on the forum, where you guys can buy, sell, and trade with other members of the forum, and supposedly a lot of that stuff got pawned off, or not pawned off, but ended up getting swapped there. And whatnot. Most people didn't know it. Most people, they didn't. Supposedly artwork got changed out. Stuff to make sure it's not, distinctive. That you ain't lifted this from somebody else. But, excuse me, that was a thing. That was a thing. Matter of fact, I won't bring that up. But there are some notable people. Excuse me. My fault. There are some notable people, allegedly, that are still in the FGC community that were accused of some pretty shady shit back in the day. It's a thing. A lot of people did dirt. I'll just say that. A lot of people allegedly did dirt.
By the way, he was later arrested for credit card fraud. Here we've got T playing Street Fighter 3. This is the larger style cabinet. It's not like the standard stand-up cabinets that you saw earlier. This was they called this the marquee because it was kind of like, a cabinet that was more prominently displayed. It was easier for more people to watch. This was the kind of cabinet you would want to hold your tournament finals on because it's a bigger screen and more people can see the action. Okay? All right. Only a couple more left here. So this is a cool group shot. Hold on, let me see if I can tell you who these people are, because I do recognize a few of them. All right, so first of all, obviously you guys see T. To the right of T, that person sitting next to him, the white guy with the white baseball cap, his name is Bill Gold. He is a Honda player in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. He has always been a Honda player, and he always will be a Honda player. He's played the game adamantly since the day it was released. He still plays it to this day. He still travels to tournaments such as all the ones in Philly. I forget what the Winter Brawl and the NEC. He still travels to those tournaments and still regularly enters them. Let's see here. If you go 3 spots to the right, 1, 2, 3, the guy on the furthest right, that's Jason Wilson from 1998. And if you know Jason Wilson from today, he pretty much looks the same, except that he looks a lot younger there. He looks like a kid, now he looks like a man, but he has the same hairdo and everything today that he has. And of course, that's Scott up behind Jason Wilson. Posing.
Also, real quick, that thing with now that I think about it, I just took a quick look back because I was wondering if I could find the video. That situation with that FGC, Mr. Wiz, and all that bullshit was about 6 months ago. Now that I think about it. And remember how Phil, if you guys remember, it was in a pre-stream, that Phil had said that word had been going around that Mr. Wiz was doing all this shit and the Cannons knew about it and they didn't say nothing. Why didn't he talk about it right here? I understand it's supposed to be a tribute to T and everything, but he didn't mind pointing out that this guy right here stole arcade sticks, and he didn't name him, and that he supposedly did credit card fraud. Why didn't you say anything about the Cannon brothers allegedly allowing inappropriate acts to be done on their watch, or how they were rigging brackets against East Coast players, including yourself? Why wasn't that brought up? I mean, it's funny how we were okay with shitting on this one dude for the credit card fraud shit and stealing, but we don't want to talk about what all these other dudes are doing, right? It's interesting how that was the case. Oh well, semantics. I'm sure there's no outside factors that would contribute to something like that. It's all random. It was nothing. I'm sure that's what it was. I'm reaching. But then 6 years later, we air everybody out. And it was a dirty little secret that no one wanted to talk about, but everybody knew. Yet again, semantics.
And then the final picture is kind of neat too. Hold on. This is awesome because here you're going to see a cacophony of players who showed up for Midwest Championships, including, if you actually take a look, hold on a second, I got to find them here. All right, so if you see where T is, you see that guy that's standing in front of T, who's kind of blocking T's face? If you look a little close at the guy's face, he's kind of giving like a snooty look. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, he kind of has an air of arrogance around him. That's David Serlin. No surprise he looks like that. He looks like that in every photo he's ever been taken in because that's his personality. Yes, David Serlin is in this goddamn picture. Okay. Also, we've got obviously you see Scott.
I don't know why what his exact beef with Serling is. I'm gonna obviously look it up because why not? You know what I'm saying? If we're gonna go ahead and cut him up, we're gonna cut him up all the way, at least best we can. But he's got issue with him over some Street Fighter port that he was working on. He's probably jealous of him because Serling has a book out that's actually a really good read. I don't know, and Serling was just a really good player. You know what I'm saying? He's a well-known player. He's certainly a well-respected player. So maybe that's what Phil's beef. I don't know. You know, Phil basically hates everybody who's more successful than he is. So it is what it is.
T, I believe right down there in the front, is that Ponder? Or is that his brother? I think down in the front might actually be Ponder's brother, who's his twin brother. Because I think they were wearing different clothing. And I think that Ponder was wearing glasses at the time. So I think that may be his twin brother. I'm not positive, though. Don't get me wrong on that. So it's one of the Cannons up front there. Not sure who. People are saying you don't know who David Serlin is. Well, you guys must not have been longtime viewers of mine because we used to talk about him quite a lot. He was the person responsible for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix. And, basically the person who single-handedly killed console Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo with the changes that he put into the game. Let me see if there's anyone else. I don't... People are making fun of some guy for having a long neck. You guys are messed up, man. Oh, and there's Bill Gold, obviously all the way on the right. I
didn't know that David Sirlin, at least, he's the president and CEO of Sirlin Games. This guy actually created. Not only is he the CEO of his own company, but he actually created a game. No shit. So he's actually done stuff with his time. He's playing against Phil too. Huh. He's actually got a shitload of interviews online, man. He's got a shitload of interviews online. Got some match vids up here with him and Phil too. Well, that's gonna be fun to dive into. No shit, shit. He played Taquito a couple times too. That was a while ago. Holy shit! All right, well, that's something to look forward to in the future, ladies and gentlemen.
One or two to the left there's Bill Gold, and it's hard to recognize. I mean, keep in mind these photos are incredibly blurry. This is old, film camera pictures, not digital camera pictures you could zoom in and clean up or anything. So that's about it. All right, so that is it for the pictures. And what I would like to do,
keep in mind too, Phil needs obviously fucking glasses, right? Because he's looking at all of that from his desktop, not the laptop that's in front of him. He's looking at the stream chat. So that's a thing too.
Is I'm gonna upload those. At some point this week. I got to figure out what's the best place, because what happens if you upload them to a certain place and you tag them, then they can go on Google Images, and anyone who searches, like I want people who search for T or Terrence Carter to be able to bring up those pictures of him. You know what I mean? And I don't know how to do that, so I'm hoping that people can give me some suggestions. Where should I upload those pictures so that when people search for him, they will pop up on Google Images? Maybe it's Facebook and I need to tag them. I don't know. Let me know. I don't know. I don't use all the social media shit. I don't understand it too much. I need to figure out how to use it. So that's that. That's the story. And, again, the person who really inspired me to have a competitive nature, the person who said, stop just playing the local competition. There's a bigger picture. That's what you should strive to be. The competition is fun. Again, like the competitive fighting spirit, like Ryu and Ken, where you always want to be one step better. You want to take on the next challenger. You don't want to be stagnant and only just sit there and do the same thing over and over and over. And T is the person who inspired me to push myself in life, really, in a lot of things, And, I never forgot him. And it's God rest his soul. I love you, T. It's been 15 years. And I never would have told you back then that my life would have been where I am now. I would have no fucking foresight whatsoever that I would have told you in 15 years' time, I'm going to make a living playing video games, right? I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing. I will have traveled the country. I will have gotten, fourth place at EVO, nationals with only 3 Japanese above me. So technically I was the best U.S. player that year. I could have never fucking seen any of that stuff back then, because back then it was just small picture.
Yeah, of course he was going to throw that part in. The thing is, though, realistically speaking, if T was alive, and if T had still been playing Street Fighter, at least on any type of level, Phil wouldn't have taken 4th in Super Turbo. If T decided to go to that tournament with Phil and decided to compete, he would, more than likely, he would have beat Phil. So 4th wouldn't have existed. And the really sad part of it all, honestly, because he says he drew inspiration from T, but he really didn't. He just latched onto him, is that after T passed away, look at what happened. You became stagnant. You became complacent. You became all of the things that T. Carter wanted you not to be. You failed him. You failed him. It's bad enough that you really couldn't live up to any of the expectations while T was alive. But goddamn, Phil, you failed him in death. Jesus Christ, Phil. You love him so much. You were supposedly motivated so much by him, and look at what you came out to be. Garbage. Utter trash. I will say this, God rest T's soul, because I would have felt bad if T would have lived to see what you turned into. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. It's funny how you latched on to him and then you went on to do all these things, right? But the moment he dies, look at what happened to you. Remember, T's the one who passed away, not you. So why are you all fucked up? Wow. I understand that was harsh, but it needed to be said.
And T was the person who pushed me to see the big picture and to strive for the big picture. And in a lot of ways, he's the person who I hold responsible for me being successful in a lot of things, instead of just being complacent and being happy to just sit here and do the status quo. He was the guy who made me see that there's more than that, and that you can strive to live your life in a way outside of just the normal status quo. Not that there's anything wrong with the status quo, but wow, what a ride it's been, right?
Now, wait a second. I'm sorry, because now I'm going to really be a dick. How the fuck that you already had all the advantages that T didn't, and yet it took someone like T who didn't have those advantages, right? And all those in the means in a lot of ways, that was able, he lived more in his short life than you've lived your entire life. If you think about it. If hear me out. Let's put this in perspective for a minute. So T has disadvantages, but he never looked at them as disadvantages. He looked at it as, if I keep striving, if I keep working hard, things will get better. Phil had all the advantages and made excuses for every one of his downfalls. T leaves us too soon, right? He leaves this planet. He left life. He left his family too soon, right? And his story ends and everybody just has fond memories of him. This piece of garbage is still lingering and is dying slow. He hasn't truly lived a day, if you want to think about it. He hasn't truly lived a day since T passed. But T's the one that's in the ground, not you. So why the fuck are you why are you rotting? Why are you stagnant? Why did you not accomplish anything? And I don't give a fuck what anybody got to say about anything. And realistically, Phil didn't do much. He didn't. All he did was let all of his wants, desires, and insecurities come up to the surface and bubble over and eventually spill all over the place. And he was too lazy and too stupid to clean it up. And in turn, he suffers. And everybody around him suffers. Like, like, at the end of the day, if the mistakes that you make fuck you up is one thing. But Jesus Christ, you fucked over Panda, you fucked over Kat, you fucked over your parents, you fucked over John and Howard. Anybody who's associated with you was screwed. Jesus Christ, some of your detractors have taken hits because of your shit. But this right here, Mr. Phantom Hooves, I love this screenshot, by the way. Mr. Phantom Hooves here is successful because he's still around. Been dying for years. This dude has been dying for years. Didn't do jack shit for jack shit. But T's the one who's actually passed away, though. And look at Phil. All he's been doing is dying slow. And didn't accomplish a goddamn thing. Unless it was on the backs of other people. He never did anything for himself. That's why I'm bringing all this back, because I want you to hear it again. That whole bullshit about, being complacent and there's a better life out there and you got to go out there and get it. He never believed in any of that. Unless he could do it off somebody else. That's why he said that if T had lived, he'd be the best Street Fighter player. Phil, meaning Phil, would have been the best Street Fighter player out there. Or one of the best out there. He certainly would have been one of the best in their state. But he wasn't going to be able to do that on his own. That wasn't unless he had T. And you can't, and one can make the argument that, oh, well, he did make it to EVO 2005 without John because, hey, GTG, you just said that John didn't actually come into the picture until after EVO 2005. You're absolutely right. But this dude also admits that he's been traveling with other people after T's passing. So he was still using somebody else as his crutch. Or other people. Oh, fuck, man. Shit gets deep, ladies and gentlemen. Shit gets deep. Someone let Cat know.
Never fucking seen any of that stuff back then, because back then it was just small picture, and T was the person who pushed me to see the big picture and to strive for the big picture. And in a lot of ways, he's the person who I hold responsible for me being successful in a lot of things, instead of just being complacent and being happy to just sit here and do the status quo. He was the guy who made me see that there's more than that, and that you can strive to live your life in a way outside of just the normal status quo. Not that there's anything wrong with the status quo, but wow, what a ride it's been, right? So at this point, you know, this chapter of my life, I finally feel happy that I was able to, you know, talk about it and get it off my chest, because I've held this in for so long and I really haven't talked about it. And thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for letting me do it. You know, I'm moving on with my life to bigger and better things. I'm moving out of Connecticut shortly.
Where the tears at, ladies and gentlemen? Here, you want me to make this bigger for y'all? I can do that. You know what I'm saying? If you guys need to see this, where is it? Show me something. Show me something. He's trying to convey he's certainly trying to convey the sentiment that he's sad about it, that he's heartbroken about it, that he still mourns T, despite the fact that he admitted that he had taken multiple years. He literally took multiple years not thinking about it. He even stopped playing Street Fighter for a while, which is interesting in itself. So it makes me wonder who brought him back in, because I don't think he just jumped in just to jump in. Someone brought him back in. But show me these tears, though. Anybody? Anybody want to point it out? You want to timestamp it for me? Show me some tears. Show me any type of sympathy or empathy for somebody else that isn't himself. Because right now, he's not even crying for T. He's crying for himself. He's crying for himself. In, what, mid-2014, when shit was starting to slack off anyway. He barely got any money in the bank saved up. His reputation's already taking a shit. Views are already diving. You know what I'm saying? And though he's on Machinima and he should be protected, he's somehow fucking that up too. Where's the tears at for T? I just thought I'd ask. I just thought I'd ask. Womp womp.
Seattle area of Washington, and I know I'm choking up a little bit here, but you know, I'm moving out of Connecticut, and it's time. This is the time to be reminiscing on things like this, and I'm so glad that you guys gave me the opportunity to share that story with you. All right. Whew. It's like
Wait,
a weight.
so
it's a weight off.
You're about to move out of Connecticut and move on with your new life, ripping your potentially or supposedly underage girlfriend from her family to take her across country, but and all the nonsense that has to do with that. But you feel it's time to go ahead and pick up and leave Connecticut, but reminisce about this situation with a friend of yours who's been dead for 15 years. This is the time to do it. You didn't see any, you didn't think of any other anniversary that you could have talked about this, like when the 10 years passing of T. You waited till 15 years to go ahead and do it. And not even necessarily on its anniversary. But this is when you felt it was time. Oh, I'm leaving Connecticut. It's time to go ahead and air people out. It's time to get as much money as I can out this bitch, because I got this $10,000 move, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, oink, oink in front of me, and I need the profit. And I'm gonna need the cash in. And guys, I'm moving, and this is a big step for me. And there's bigger and better things going on, and I need you guys to support me. And so you guys can continue to support me, let you in on this dark period of my life, this really sad moment in my life. But led to one of the biggest moments of my life when it comes to the FGC. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. It might seem like I'm giving him too much credit, like he has sat there and basically planned all this whole situation out. But he did. He admitted that when he said that a couple of days prior to this, he went and looked up the aspects of the case, which means he was doing all this for a reason. You can call it a reach if you want. Seems somewhat calculated to me. Poor execution, of course, but seems like it was a plan to me.
My shoulders, it really is. All right, so as I tear up like a little baby, thank you for watching Hate Live, everyone. There's obviously no time for callers this week. I apologize. Maybe next week we'll be more back on track with the normal stuff when I'm not here blubbering like a little wimp. And we'll do it then. But save your questions. Next week we'll have callers.
Is being a wimp reminiscing about your fallen friend? That's what a wimp is. Reminiscing about your friends. So I can call you just a straight up pussy then when your parents die, right? Grown ass man crying about some old people. I can do that, right? If you're gonna call it a wimp crying over someone who died 15 years ago, I can call you a straight bitch for going ahead and crying about your parents dying then, right? I can do that, right? If I was a real malicious, heartless, brain dead fucking detractor idiot like you say all of us are, I could do that, right? Now the question is, Phil, do I have that in me to do so? I'll go ahead and we can just keep that a secret between you and me for now. Just saying. I've never heard anybody having a problem with mourning their friend. Jesus Christ, you have war vets who still fucking mourn over their friends and shit, and no one calls them wimps or sissies or pansies or anything like that, including themselves. That's almost insulting T's memory by doing that. Is that what you think about his mother when she mourns his death? Or his brothers and sisters or whatever relatives he has? Do you think they're little wimps crying over his grave? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just being honest. I want to know. I want an understanding of it. Because, this scumbag couldn't even get tears out for him. This scumbag admitted that for a number of years he didn't even want to think about it or talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Out of sight, out of mind, if you will. And because he was only able to use T to a certain point, what other value did he have? I know that sounds brutal to say, but that don't mean I'm wrong either. Something to think about.
Thanks for putting up with me for 2 hours. And that is it. Have a good night, everyone. Whether you're watching on Twitch or on YouTube, thank you very much. Peace out. Have a good night. I'll see you for gameplay tomorrow. But for now, thanks a lot for that. And I'll see you later.
Alright. That's that. Oh, that's that. Now, I have the reputation of being an asshole. So let me not overstate the obvious, and I won't apologize for that, because it is what it is. That's me. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't convinced. This had a clear motive behind it, and he did what he did. And he did it for profit. From him building T up at the very beginning of this, to going ahead and bringing him back down the level to where they could balance out a little bit by using the Ken and Ryu fucking analogy, for saying that, for Phil over the years saying that he was from the hood, he was from an extremely dangerous area, only to admit that T was actually from the really, really dangerous area, and Phil was, and apparently Phil was in a moderately nice area compared to the point. It's almost like in a very sick sort of way. I want you to really think about this for a minute. It's almost as if he tried to co-op some of T's story into his own. Now, that's a crazy thing to think. I understand that and whatnot, but I'm confident that there's at least a few of you out there who kind of see that. You know what I'm saying? And may have seen it. Certainly before I've said it. So I'm not saying that's even an original idea. I'm sure there's other people who feel that. It takes a certain type of individual to come out and say it, But fuck it. What do I have to? What do I have to lose? And then would any of us be surprised? Phil borrows from the aspects of other people. Like you saw that with some of John's mannerisms, Howard's mannerisms, OJ's mannerisms, Panda's mannerisms, Cat's mannerisms. He borrows from a lot of people to make this husk of dried out clay, which is Phil Burnell. So you're telling me he wouldn't take aspects of people's backstory to boost his own story up? Is that really out of the norm? Does that seem like something that really seems preposterous to any of you? I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, yet again, this is from a personal bias, if you will. I'm a detractor. I'm supposed to shit on him. It is what it is. What are your thoughts as it pertains to this situation and whatnot? Hopefully the music works this time. And I actually picked a song that I feel, even though I never met T, never interacted with the dude a day in my life at all and whatnot. I picked, I feel, a song that's extremely underrated, but I think it would be would kind of convey the appreciation for what and who T was, at least for what little I know. I don't know much and whatnot, so it is what it is. Anyway, so I thought the song would be fitting, so that's why I chose it. And whatnot. Milf and Cookies actually chose the first song and whatnot. She thought it'd be a nice way to start it all off and whatnot. So there you go on that. Give me a second. We'll reconvene for final thoughts. I'll let you guys go, man. I'll let you guys go. Yikes.
Yeah. Turn my mic up a little bit. Rap back, boy. Yeah. Hey yo, whose arm is this? I guess Slim cut it off at the pharmacist. We murdering MCs, then flee to wherever the Bahamas is. I blew up, so that should let y'all know just who the bombers is. Cause I can see the future like my glasses Nostradamus is. Damn these rappers and they feelings like an orthodontist. It's probably cause my skin is white, come on, be more than honest. I signed a deal with Def Jam, cause I'm the man. These fucking sorters and kinders, yo. Hey yo, my city behind us. I know that you see that I'm murdering sinners all up in them when I rhyme this. My flow is impeccable, hella unbreakable, no way nobody else on us. So let me slow it down. Yo, let me slow it down. Check it, yo, let me slow it down. So these ignorant people hear me. Even my favorite MCs won't get near me cause they fear me, revere me. No disrespect, I mean that shit sincerely. I am merely the second renaissance to the fullest. It's all love from up above. Keep a gat in the glove just in case. Introduce you to Christ like Mayside. Nah, all of y'all know that logic keep the peace, but my brothers keep a peace in the streets. You got it, capiche? See, that's a life I never wanted, but I grew up in and did a lot of dumb shit I never do again. What?
The flow trustable, sick and it's untouched. The flow trustable, sick and it's untouched. The flow trustable, sick and it's untouched. Can't fuck with this style. Funk vibe. Pro era. Funk volume. Fuck with this style.
I said, who want war? Mass killing MCs. I'm your dad and nothing less than a seed. Please, you can't rock with me, so and I still got.
Oh, that's that Kurt Knight. I feel bad I have to cut in on that. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, that's hurtful. I'm sorry, Kurt. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, yet again, make of this what you will, and whatnot, to be honest. If nothing else, I want to be completely transparent with you that moving forward, as it pertains to this DSP lore, it's not going to be all shits and giggles and shit. Some of the shit's going to hit. It's going to hit you in a way that you're not really familiar with. It's going to hit with some shit that you're not really expecting. I'm not saying this shit's going to be drastic or nothing like that. What I will say is I'm going to say some things that most of you are not going to be comfortable with. If you feel the need to bow out temporarily or even permanently, then you got to do what you got to do. I hold no ill. I'm not going to hold nothing against anybody over nothing. At the end of the day, I made my choice and whatnot. I felt how I felt and I said it. And like I said, if that's not something that you're comfortable with, or so in the case, I get it. You know what I'm saying? And I wouldn't want to put you in a situation that you're not comfortable with and whatnot. But this is some of the stuff we're going to see. It's not going to be all fucking giggles and shit. I'm going to say some things that are going to provoke some thought. And it's not going to be all, you know, it's not going to be the point and laugh shit that we're used to. Some of this shit's going to hit hard. Some of you are asking, hey, will we get some Sons of Kojima? some of that shit's not gonna hit. Is gonna hit different. You know what I'm saying? That's gonna be when we get to what's it called, worst moments of 2017. That's gonna be a rough one. That's gonna be really rough. So keep that in mind. But this is what the lore is, ladies and gentlemen. At the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? The concept that Phil is misunderstood and all this other bullshit that people try to fucking put out there is just silly. He knows what he is. He's calculated. He's not some evil fucking genius or anything, but he's not a fucking complete total tart. That's the people who follow him. So it is what it is. The thing is, though, as it pertains to T, is like I said, T was nothing more, in my opinion, T was nothing more than a stepping stone for Phil. That's all his value really was, and whatnot. And yet again, you know, none of us here know what the true extent of their relationship is or whatnot. I'm assuming. I'm making an assumption. It's extremely fair to say, and I'll stand behind that because Phil's history has proven that. He's proven he don't value nobody. Everybody has to have a use, and after that use is over with, it's a done data. It's a wrap. He'll step over anybody to continue to keep moving forward. There's nothing admirable about that. At the end of the day, life continues to move forward. I get it, but you can do that without stepping over people. You know what I'm saying? You think this tribute video means jack shit for jack shit? You waited 15 years to do that, bro. And you waited till you left Connecticut. It's funny how he has the penchant of wanting to profit off people when he was trying to get up and out of there. Just like how he wanted those Project 7 shirts from John and Howard before he left, and then went ahead and threw those over there on Patreon to push that narrative, and to push the fact that there was going to be the Project 7 reboot, which was supposed to be him revitalizing the series, not a trailer. But he lied to those people over that too. All this shit ties into each other, ladies and gentlemen. All this shit ties in some way, shape, or form. Like I said, it is what it is. Thank you very much for coming by and dealing with my nonsense. I very much appreciate it. And I'll see you guys for the next one. Hopefully the next one's a bit more cheerful. Let's see what we got here. Let me see if I can try to give you guys a sneak preview of what's on the menu. We have we got compilations upon a compilation. We got some compilations of some shit. I have there is the Jaha confrontation. There is the situation that happened with Cross Assault. That happened a couple years ago. That was in 2012, actually. That's prior to this, actually, where that situation with Aries and that one chick up there and everything, and how that whole show got fucked to hell. Phil's hot takes on that. I've got a couple of videos of Phil shitting on other pro players, Justin Wong being one of them. I've got some interesting stuff for you, to be honest. On top of other stuff that's outside the FGC, we're gonna mix it up a little bit because you can easily. Some of this shit is gonna be crazy because he's gonna contradict himself in a lot of this stuff. It should be an interesting year. There should be also. I'm gonna start working on that, a channel update video for not only for this channel but for the main channel. We didn't get to do one at all last year, so I want to do one this year. Within the first quarter, apparently, and give you guys an idea of what other stuff is coming about. This might be premiered, so for all of you who showed up to the premiere, thank you. I very much appreciate it. My bad for the music not working on the last premiere. My bad. And whatnot. I hope for it to be better moving forward and whatnot. There's a bit of a change for another project that another member of the team was doing. So my apologies on that. I should check. So it is what it is. All right, ladies and gentlemen. This is DSP News 2nd Edition. This is this is Nortopia. I'm sorry. That kind of cheers me up a little bit. And this is the Gout Report. Take care of yourselves. And RIP to all of those that we've lost. Later, guys. Talk is getting tired. I mean, the fact I'm this far should tell you I follow what I desire. I'm the man. In the land of the snakes, I do what I can. I have king symptoms. You just hooked on phonics with your friends, got that living in ivy. Your flow ain't acceptable, nigga. We coming up so we could kill everybody. We headed, you better dead it before we catch you when you be out in your Bugatti. Nah, that nigga ain't nobody. He sloppy. Lollygagging with the bandwagon posse. Use a hoe. Pussy dry, you ain't cleaned it in months. Preacher
Teaching that teamwork makes the dream work from the jump. Chump, the homeless man that's eating rappers for lunch. A blunt to back it up, I hope that I ain't asking for much. What? The flow trustable, sick and it's untouched. The flow trustable, sick and it's untouched. The flow trustable, sick and it's untouched. Can't fuck with the style. Funk volume. Rat pack. Pro era. Funk volume. Fuck with the style.